Call the meeting to order. Are there any Form A applications? Being none, Dan, on the proposed zoning bylaw changes?
You should have been given copies of the proposed articles for consideration at the annual town meeting. These are a listing of zoning amendments. Zoning amendments that would be considered.
So I have a couple sets of them. Did you submit both sets?
I don't know what you're referring to, both sets. I gave instructions that they're,
Yeah.
those are the subdivision regulations.
Okay, yep, these are the zoning.
Subdivision regulations, you should have gotten one sheet today with 2 zoning amendments. Okay. Let me just go through. Most of these were submitted by the building inspector, and I'll go through them. The first one is an amendment of the general regulations concerning all signs should have a physical street address. That was felt to be important by the building inspector. Any discussion of that?
I'd want to hear from the police chief or the fire chief if it makes a difference. Just to hear what they have to say.
Well, the fire chief needs to approve the street so there's no confusion on the street signs. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, so, is this a zoning bylaw or a general bylaw? Zoning bylaw?
Zoning bylaw.
So moving forward, every business, as part of their sign, would have to have the physical address on it, somewhere on the sign? Is that what we were?
Yeah, the street number, so.
Not just 740, but 740 Bedford Street.
Is that something the post office requires? I always wonder kind of why.
There's no requirement right at the moment, and this is going to be helpful in locating an emergency, and it's an address will help you to the police department, fire department, find the location.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, Sean.
I was so concerned, it actually says all signs have to have the address on it. Whereas maybe every commercial property shall either have the address on the building or on a sign. I don't know if you want it on every single sign that might be out there. That's the way it reads. So, like for example, Lowe's. If Lowe's was coming in, you'd have to have Lowe's' address on the sign out on the street, and you'd have to have Lowe's' address on the building. I don't think that's what they intend. I think that this has to be wordsmith.
Lowe's actually has their street address on their building right now. It says something Bedford Street.
Right.
Right, but how this is worded, it's a fine idea, just we need to tweak it so we make sure we're doing what's intended, which is to, on one of the signs, so like if you have a big billboard sign, it's just once as opposed to having every part of that sign have it, or if you have a building where there's multiple signs because it's multiple businesses, do you have to have it on each individual business, or is it just the one out front? I think, just need to tweak that a little bit.
When I saw this, I thought it meant houses, like I had to have my street address on my house.
And I would suggest it might be, in many cases, more important that the street address be on the building than on the sign, because like in Rick's spot, like Stop and Shop, if the fire department's responding to 340 Center Avenue, and on the sign out front it says Target is 340, Stop and Shop is 342 or whatever, I don't know if that's going to help so much as if they're going into a complex like Thayer Street, you can see where you can identify the building.
Chief?
If I could, I'll have to read this before I officially comment, but I believe the intent on this, you see it along the Commonwealth, is because of commuters, they call in the incident, they have no idea where they are. Just as you're in another town, you may not actually know what street name you're on. And that's, I think, what the intent is. I'd have to read the language before I really...
I think it really pertains to freestanding signs.
Well, that's a good point. Chief just brought up that.
I didn't use it.
I think it pertains primarily to freestanding signs that would be on the property.
Again, I'd have to read it, just as long as common sense prevails. I think that's the intent behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I love to have always the wiggle room and say, if you're going to say something like that, say, unless otherwise waived by the planning board. Put it on all sides, but there may be times where you don't want it, on certain signs where you do want to make sure your address is on the Lowe's sign out on Route 18, in that case. But it's not the one on the building.
So maybe just adding the language, all freestanding roadside signs are required to have the physical street address on them. I think that's how we distinguished it when we rewrote it. It was a difference between roadside signs and the building signs.
Freestanding and what?
Standing roadside sign.
Freestanding roadside signs.
Okay.
Okay, Dan?
That would, yeah, that would be the building inspector would then approve it. I think that does it. And the next one is, so why don't we approve these as we go, so that we just.
All right, so that's on 219U. That's the one we're doing.
No, this is, you're in the subdivision regulations.
Yeah, I thought it was-
Freestanding.
Do I have that?
I think if we do a motion on each one of these articles and then dispose of them that way.
So this is the motion to put it on the town meeting warrant?
Correct.
Okay.
Is this the public hearing?
We'll have to have a public hearing before it goes on.
All right, so this is just to advance it to the public hearing stage, or?
This is-
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Okay?
So we need a motion?
Motion, second.
Motion's made, seconded, to a discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
All right, the next one would amend the definitions of words usage for swimming pools. Any structure intended for swimming or recreational bathing that contains over 24 inches, 610 millimeters deep. This includes in-ground, above-ground, and on-ground swimming pools, hot tubs, and spas.
So are we adding hot tubs and spas? Is that the change?
This is, what we're adding here is really the 24 inches. That's, you know, that's the definition.
That probably comes out of the building code, does it?
Well,
I would assume.
why are we adding 24 inches? Any idea why 24 inches? I know the building inspector's been trying to make changes to this definition for 3 years now, and he refuses to come here and actually explain what he's trying to do, which would be nice eventually to have him come to a meeting once in a while. But yeah, I don't, what are we trying to solve here? What's the problem we're trying to solve here?
It's adding a definition to the bylaw.
No, I understand. I guess what is the problem we're trying to solve? Because there's a reason he wants to put it in there, because he's having some sort of complication or confusion when it comes to
He has.
something. I don't like having necessarily hot tubs and spas under the same category as swimming pools, because it's a whole different, I think it's a whole different structure. So I'd want to know why the need to have them clustered together. And I'd also want to know why the definition of 24 inches deep, and what's the need for this? And again, he's,
May I suggest this? May I suggest we put it on the warrant, and when we have our hearing, if we don't have at the hearing, we'll make a recommendation to the town meeting what the board votes at the public hearing.
I'd rather not put it on the warrant if we don't know what it does, because this is our name on it, and if we can't explain it, I don't think it should be on the warrant. So do we have time where we can come take this up again in March?
I don't know what Sean, do you know when that closes?
I know, the town meeting I heard was being scheduled for May 18th, it's a Monday.
Right, but when do we have to have this article in for the selectmen, so it'll be published?
Warrant's open, I think it's to the end of March. Town clerk is it.
The board can feel differently, but I'm just saying how.
Please?
The board can feel differently, but this is, my personal feeling is if we can't explain what this does or understand what it does, I don't think our name should be attached to it.
So you're gonna march on this.
Please?
We could go to March on this if.
Okay, we'll postpone a vote on that.
To March,
Go right ahead,
just write that.
Dan.
Well, these were all submitted by the building inspector, so if that's your problem, you're gonna have to call the building inspector.
Oh, we have, and he doesn't show up, so, I mean, but we can go through these.
If we go through these and you're not going to approve them, so what's the difference? Waste our time here?
No, I think it's still a good conversations to have, because maybe there's some that we like. I have questions about some of them, but
For the record, I'd echo the same thing Rick just said. I don't know why hot tubs and spas being added into it.
Could you speak up a little, Sean?
What's that?
Could you speak
I'm
up?
sorry. For the record, I would echo what Rick just said. Hot tubs and spas being added to the definition is something new. I don't think it's in the building code. I'm not sure exactly how this all works. I was just looking online. I don't think there is a definition of swimming pool in the bylaw, in the zoning bylaw. So
I think that was his problem last time.
Yeah, so, but I don't know what the problem is that they're trying to get. I just get concerned about, because once you start saying swimming pool now, that also triggers fencing requirements and things, so. Put them together.
Pass on to that one, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Well, we didn't pass over, we just didn't vote.
Yeah,
We
just
didn't. Okay.
The next one is to amend section 17521 table use recommendations by amending G10. And this pertains to small-scale roof-mounted solar equipment to state small-scale ground-mounted or small-scale roof-mounted solar equipment shown below.
My concern on that, Dan, is that I don't know what small is, and I know there have been some towns that, some people have put out a structure in their front yard, and the neighbors have complained vehemently about it, and it can be an eyesore, so I really would like to see us do something on what a small size is, and how far away from the street it should be.
Or sideline, or setback.
Or if it should be set back from the house line or something like that.
I'll try to get that information from,
Oh.
you know, or, I'm only the messenger.
Oh, I
You
know it.
understand that?
Oh, I understand that, Dan, I appreciate that.
So we could do
So,
that, we could do that in March.
I-
There
it may-
probably should be a difference between a roof mounted, you have the roof space.
Roof is a roof.
You could have a lot more
Okay,
yard
so-
space
so-
than a roof space.
We need to have that further defined on freestanding.
Okay, the next one pertains to accessory apartments and the definitions, to add accessory apartment and to see that section of the bylaw which pertains to that, 17532, 1.
is that related to the one that's on the next page?
Yes,
Okay. And so the one on the next page is the big change that we're just making requirement, they have to file the statements every year? Because we don't currently do that?
no, they don't.
I'm surprised, okay.
I thought that was in the original one, actually, my own,
Well, it's changed. You see,
a little bit, but,
what has changed there is that they have to list the name and family relationship
okay,
of the occupants.
that makes sense. Any questions on that? Someone want to make a motion for that one?
I'll make the motion.
Motion made. Seconded?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved.
This next article proposes to amend section 17579 and include affidavits as well as permits and certificate fees.
I think we skipped over one. Did we skip over the fencing around the large-scale ground-mounted?
Well, I thought we were going
That's all part of it.
Okay, we'll skip over that.
to, yeah.
So they just want to include affidavit.
Yes.
Okay.
just changing the title, it appears.
Yeah.
Just so the words where the section only says, fees shall be established by the Board of Selectmen. And right now, the title is permit and certificate fees. They want to change the title to permit affidavit certificate fees.
Okay.
Okay, the next one is,
We voting on that? We need to vote on that?
yes, sorry.
Motion to
Approve.
approve.
Seconded?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved.
All right. This next article deals with an amendment to section 175.13, lots transected by a boundary line by changing 50 feet to 100 feet. When a lot is transected by a zoning district boundary line, the regulations of the bylaw applicable to the larger part, 50% or greater, of such lot may also, at the option of the lot owner, be deemed to govern in smaller part up to a maximum distance of 50 feet, now that would be 100 feet, beyond such zoning district boundary line, provided that the buffer area required in section 175.66 of this bylaw are met.
Is that by the building inspector also?
No, this was submitted,
Me,
Why 100? And it's been 50 for forever. Why 100?
Sean?
Mr. Chairman, it hasn't been 50 forever. It used to have no limit to it. So, for example, this helps to encourage commercial development. Because, for example, when Walmart came in years ago, the highway commercial line went back, I think, about 300 feet. But the parcel that it was built on was about 450 feet. Those are just round ball numbers. At the time, it said you can take the majority of the lot. If its majority is highway commercial, you can extend it to the back lot line, basically treat it all as one zone. Otherwise, you have to get a variance in most cases. And the first question is, well, what's your hardship? You know, and it's kind of a difficult question, or at least a question that you need one person to say no, and the project is gone, goes up. So it used to always say the majority of the lot can be extended over the minority of the lot. Then at one point it was brought down to a 50-foot limit. And in the grand scheme of things, if you've got a 250 or 300-foot deep lot, and you only go an extra 50 feet, that might not always be enough. 100 just gives that maybe a little extra opportunity to get this commercial development moving without the need for that variance. If they need to go further, yes, you need a variance for that.
So I feel like this would really be impactful along Route 18, because as we're learning about the first lot and a half off Route 18 is part of the highway commercial district. So I think this has some pretty big implications if you live along Route 18 or abut a property that is along Route 18. And I'm not saying it's a bad idea, I'm saying I don't know enough about it to vote on it tonight. I need to look at a map, I need to figure out, do we want to do this only in some zoning districts versus other zoning districts? It's just, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I'm just saying I don't have the information that I would need.
I agree with Rick once again. Mark the calendar's right. There are some parts of Route 18 where the highway commercial line is 150 feet back, and sometimes it's 350 feet. It varies, so you're right. It has different pros and cons in different areas. And honestly, I haven't gone down and looked at it, but maybe that's something we can do in preparation for a hearing.
Well, I'm wondering because the arbitrary mark we picked for the depth of a zoning line doesn't line up with property lines, that this would be I would think we'd handle something like this as a special permit, where yes, you can absorb that lot, but just so somebody's checking it, including it in.
That would probably be a great alternative remedy, because a special permit is not a variance.
Yeah.
And a special permit, you still have to demonstrate that you're not going to create a problem, basically, by doing it. So perhaps that's a way
Yeah.
you could proceed in that manner.
What's your pleasure, gentlemen?
Well, I would
You want
want
to take this up at the next meeting, or?
Well, it's up to you, Rick. I'm fine with it. If we had a special, I would amend it to that would be by special permit.
I'd be more than happy to try to draw up something like that for your March meeting, to look at that.
Yeah, I'd-
Okay.
If we can push this off till March and get some maps and
Okay?
just to figure out how it's gonna impact.
Okay, the next article deals with 17521, the table of use regulations, G, which states that solid waste facilities are prohibited in a technology business district. That's a housekeeping item. That district no longer is in the bylaw.
So motion?
I would want to just make sure that we're not opening up something here.
For,
It's, I mean, solid waste facilities are not allowed in the industrial area currently.
No, this is just in the table of use regulations, just striking that out, because it doesn't exist.
Technology business.
Okay.
To delete the note, yeah, okay.
motion
Make a motion to delete.
made, seconded, further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Go ahead.
Okay, the next item pertains to section 17577, site plan review, and would add new sections D and E. They're in reverse order here, I see.
Yeah, that,
Just wanted to see if you were paying attention.
yeah.
I think D should be the first one there, and E
Do we
was
need to
second.
change that?
Yeah.
Well, so
Penalties should
the
follow.
first one will be D, that's now
That's
marked
design
E,
field changes.
and the D will be E.
Yeah. During the course of construction, if conditions necessitate the alteration of the approved plan, the applicant must notify the planning board in writing and must have the design changes approved, should be approved, and incorporated into the amended plan, which will require approval by the board. Failure to do so will result in penalties as outlined in section E.
E?
Yes. Penalties. Any failure to build in accordance with the approved plan shall be subject to a penalty determined by the board commensurate with the need to mitigate the extent of the failure of the applicant to build the project according to the approved plan, or to have the applicant completely remove the unapproved work.
That's what you've been after, Rick.
I'm surprised we don't already have language, but that's,
Have what?
I'm surprised we don't already have language.
It's a heavy hammer. I mean, I know we got people using it, but it is a heavy hammer.
I mean, with penalties, I'd like to look at the language going even a little further. About, you know, beyond just paying to fix it. I mean, there should be an administrative penalty or something, just to give us the option if we need to. If someone's been particularly negligent. But, I mean, I support it, obviously.
Perhaps we pass this, and if we think we should add something, we can do that.
I'd like to ask town council how far we can go in the language
Okay?
within the state law.
You want to approve this at
Yes.
this point, and then you can,
I'd be fine with that.
okay. Yes, Sean?
Although I agree that we should codify this procedure better, as written, I completely would object to this, because it basically says if there's any changes on site during construction that are different from the plan, that happens on a regular basis, whether it's an elevation change, or a wall moves, or we hit ledge, you didn't know it, so you can't put a fence where you want. There's all sorts of changes. But we need to have some sort of way that if it's a minor change, that a representative from the board can come out, and if they say, this is above me, I want it to go to the board, fine. Or if it's minor and someone from the board can say, that's fine, but put it in writing, document it. The issue being, you guys only meet every month, and to have to potentially stop a project until we get to you to get a site condition change could be devastating.
Well, I understand that to a point. The problem that we've had with the thing at this point is that we've actually had buildings that have been larger than the original plans, not smaller, but larger, and substantially. And a lot of other problems that they come in afterwards, and it's pretty difficult to fix the problem.
And I don't have any problem if you have something in writing like that that says some sort of, again, where do you draw the line, what's substantial, what's not? Something like that, you're right, should come back here and should get addressed, or, you know, an updated or revised plan. But I would not want to just say any change requires a board vote. That's,
No, they have to have a way to submit it while the process is going on. Our clients have, when they make architectural changes out in the field, I said, well, I say mostly it's fine, but main thing, document it, get it right over to the building inspector, so when he walks out, he doesn't see something that shouldn't be there. But same thing with the board, if we come back and we hear that everything's changed, and we had no idea.
I'm sure there's a way to do
Yeah.
this, and it should be done. I agree with that. I just don't think you can have don't use the language you're using right now.
You know, I think in this particular point, it would be good to pass this tonight, and then at the hearing, we could
Yeah.
make some changes.
Changes to the hearing.
And I think that's something we need to look into. But I'd like to have something on the books that we've neglected to have over the
I
years.
have no problem with that. I just wanted to voice my opinion, so you'll know I'll be there.
Well, we can do this at the public hearing.
What's that?
We can do this at the public
Yeah.
hearing.
Yeah,
Motion?
right.
Someone want to make a
I'll make a
motion?
motion.
Motion made, seconded.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Passed unanimous.
Okay, these two were added. To see if the town will vote to amend section 175-32D4 as follows. Right now, it reads, and this pertains to multi-unit dwellings, apartments, condominium complexes of 12 or more residential units. It requires that, presently, that 50 feet of, the dimensional requirements for developments of 12 housing units or more in any zoning district within the town of Abington require that any building shall be at least, this is what it says presently, 60 feet from any lot line that abuts the proposed development, 60 feet from any street line, 15 feet from any parking area, 15 feet apart in the event a variance or more than one building is on a lot is granted by the zoning board of appeals. And this implies that a variance was requested, which may not necessarily be the case. So the change would be to state that 50 feet from any other residential building granted for the site, and then furthermore. So that would just delete that language saying that on a lot granted by a zoning board of appeals, a variance.
So would that mean you couldn't apply for a variance?
Oh, no, it just means that this is implied that there is one already that, you know, has been in effect. That's what I would,
There's a discrepancy.
And the other,
Kind of a discrepancy in the zoning bylaws. Things have been amended over time, certain conflicts arise. So there's one part of the bylaw that says you can't have more than one principal building on a lot without a variance. Then you have this section 7032, that talks about if you have 12 more buildings, 12 more units, you can have multiple buildings, but they have to be 50 feet apart. So impliedly, you don't need a variance if you have 12 or more units, because this kind of takes care of it. Just keep 50 feet apart and give us a site plan. The problem you have is, what if you have less than 12 units? If I have, let's say, 5 two-unit buildings, and so I want to build a smaller development, I don't want 12 or more units. And I don't want to have one 8-unit building, I want to have, let's say, 2 4-unit buildings. Now I need a variance to have more than one building on a lot. The 50-foot thing doesn't kick in, because I'm not in the 12 or over thing. So it's, how do we adjust this? Again, I'll try to prepare for March to come up with some wording that would help. But there are situations where at some points in time, it makes more sense for a developer to build more units to get into section 32, so you don't have to get a variance to have fewer units. And that seems to be not where we want to go. So
would this language change that, though? Because this is still only impacting the developments of 12 units or more.
yeah, what I'd like to do is kind of clarify, maybe in section 32, that you don't need a variance, or maybe the solution is to go clarify that. I think it's, I want to say it's section 4, but I'm not sure. The one that says no more than one principal building a lot. There is some language in there that says, to the effect, except for apartments, condominiums, and commercial projects. And I believe it even recites to this. So I think there is kind of an exemption. So if there is, then you shouldn't mention variance here.
So the other part of this is that I'm guessing it's changing what is considered, what can be closer to it, because under this reading, it has to be 50 feet apart from any building, which could include a garage, maintenance shed, commercial
Residential.
building.
Residential.
Right, but it says from one building on a lot, and if it's, and then we just change it to residential, we include the word residential, so are we including sheds, garages?
No.
So it's gotta be, should be called a dwelling unit
I
then?
think if you put it on your hearing agenda, these are the things we have to iron out, and if you think it's, if we do iron it out, resolve it, we should bring it down. And if we can't get there, we'll have to do it again next year.
What's your pleasure, gentlemen?
I'll advance it for further discussion. Move to put it on the
Second it?
advance.
Anyone second it?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pass.
The final article here pertains to 175-39 multiple use plan development district. Right now, the tract frontage required in the bylaw requires that a tract be in single or consolidated ownership of at least 10 acres in size. And I'm suggesting here that that be reduced to 3 acres in size, which I think would probably, one of the things that I think is wrong with that district is that it's, nothing much has happened there, and I think because of the lot size that's required, that this may facilitate more interest in that development of that area.
Do we know other towns that have a Muppet district like this, what their dimensional requirements are?
You,
No, no.
you,
This is, that multiple use plan development district was really to encourage, speculative kind of projects that might go up there.
Yeah.
But nothing much has happened in that district, and I think largely because the tract size has been so large. I mean, it's quite a bit of land assembly to get 10 acres, together.
Well, just for the public's elucidation, that's along Chestnut Street, right, where that gentleman is building the
Yeah.
big building complex for the commercial buildings.
Yeah, the Muppet District is on the northern side of Chestnut Street, and I believe it's also near the air
It is
base,
here.
Coal Tar, for people who live in Abington. It does require a parcel with 10 acres of land and 200 feet of frontage. And frankly, I think the 200 feet is sometimes more difficult, because there are parcels that might have 100 feet, and then they balloon out to a 20-acre parcel. Part of it, I had a client who did get an approved project up on Chestnut Street for some commercial. I think the intent of the Muppet District was to have non-residential development on Chestnut Street for fire and police response reasons. Another problem we have up there, though, is the land itself is
Oh, ledge.
high-tension wires, endangered species, and a pond. So there's a lot of issues when that 10-acre parcel all of a sudden shrinks because you gotta stay away from the pond, you can't build with the ledges. So,
yes, Bruce.
any sort of flexibility might invite some, doesn't mean, you could still do it on 10 acres, but if the minimum is 3 or 4, at least they can propose something.
Yeah, I just, through the chair, I would say, yeah, I know that area, and it's a lot of ledge and swamp and everything else in there. So, I mean, you might need to look at a 10-acre site to get a couple acres buildable. And I'm just thinking that if we reduced it to 3 acres and say most of that, well, you could put lots together, I suppose. Because, I mean, say you had 3 acres and only half an acre of it was buildable.
But then it requires land assembly, which might be in different ownership and so forth, which makes it more difficult.
There is no perfect bylaw. That will be.
On the motion, what's your pleasure?
I guess I'll advance for further discussion. One request I'd like to potentially do is, can we get, I guess, tax assessor maps of Chestnut Street, what's left, or what hasn't been built on? Because with 500 Chestnut, that's a big chunk of it. There's still another chunk heading towards Brockton. But I'd be curious as to what is actually still developable.
Yeah, because the side on the state park is probably that, you know, if you drive into
Well, you know,
Brockton.
actually, if you look at the planning board has a map, a zoning map with all of the lot lines on it.
Hmm.
So you can pretty much see what the, you know, the parcel sizes are.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to, but overlaying the environment, you mean.
Yeah.
Certainly,
Well-
certainly the assessor's office can furnish that, you know. the
Will that
information.
available at the hearing? We'll have that available at the hearing.
Great, thank you.
So Rick's made the motion.
Motion made and seconded then.
And second,
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Everybody say aye.
Aye.
So moved.
Now we got the subdivision.
You want to do the subdivision regulations here?
Would be better to move on to a couple of the hearings since we have a full
Oh,
audience.
Dan won't be here for it. That's the only problem.
Okay.
There's only a few of these.
That Dan.
it's in big font, Dan.
Yeah. Get this. Okay, these are proposed changes to the subdivision rules and regulations that would be done by the board. That, in that first chapter 214H, it would delete streets in that description, street names, veteran service agent.
And it would add the planning board.
The highlighted words are to be included, the stricken words are to be deleted. So it would replace streets with public ways, the veteran service agent with the planning board, and added in the shade trees.
I think you're gonna do shade trees separately. Can we do
Yeah, let's just do them.
214H?
Okay, yeah.
14H.
Motion on 214H.
Why are we changing it from, they'd get the list of available names from the veteran service
We
agent to
have,
the
we have the
planning board?
available list already of all the deceased people.
Okay.
And it's in our records, and the planning board's been doing that ever since we lost our agent,
Okay.
passed away. And it's worked out very well.
Okay.
And if any new ones, obviously, we'll have record of new passings.
Okay.
Motion.
Motion made,
Second?
second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Now the shade trees.
Okay, section 219S pertains to shade trees. And such trees that are suitable in the opinion of the tree warden for preservation shall be preserved. Where in the opinion of the tree warden, this is existing language.
Yeah, and we're gonna have to eliminate tree warden because we don't have a tree warden in town, and I think that's something we need up for discussion. I think that DPW is in charge of that, but I'm not quite sure that they're aware of the trees, but for the sake of, I don't know who that person should be or agency, it may be just for the planning board. But DPW would at least have an idea on street trees, what they like on street trees, but I do know that in some instances, I might disagree with the DPW, because I know what they'd like to do is have no trees at all. And I think that's part of the problem. The tree warden would have been the natural person to go to, but it probably has to be DPW at this point. I don't know, unless you say it's the planning board. I think the planning board, in this case, might have, I think that's something to consider.
Well, we could pass
Maybe we
this for
can vote
discussion.
this tonight and then do the same thing at the hearing.
So just to bring to the board's attention, the email I asked Nancy to print out for everybody, it's just some thoughts I've had on a slightly different way of approaching this. So at the bottom of it, you'll see, it's just kind of an outline, it's not real formal language, but it addresses a couple of issues, I think. One is, when we get site plans, we don't get any sort of indication as to whether or not there's trees on the lot to start with. So I would like applicants to say, oh, no, these are trees of some significance, so we know. Other towns do this. I know we're not the only one, other towns do this. So, you know, whether they're 9 inches, 12 inches, 15 inches, 24 inches, whatever the diameter we choose, that we can at least know, are we is this development going to be clearing down some significant trees? The idea being, we're interested in preserving our green canopy. We're interested in the climate change issue. We're interested in making sure the town looks nice. The other part of this, number 2, and we're seeing this pop up in the stormwater management regulations we'll probably talk about later, is they're really encouraging builders not to just clear-cut lots. And I want to make sure that our language is similar to this, which is we really only want them clearing what they need to clear to build, to do their building. And then not clear the lot and then go back and plant trees afterwards. Because it's easier to do it that way. Rather, only cut down what you have to cut down. And then the third part of this is, we've talked about the tree-lined streets issue. How with subdivisions, it's really challenging to have, you know, street trees every 20 or 30 feet, whatever the number is. And we're starting to see people say, well, I really don't want the street trees. Well, okay, can we have 2 different approaches? We can say, all right, under one approach, you can do street trees, where you have it every 30 feet, and this is the list you can choose from. Or the other option is, maybe you want to plant more trees along the plot lines or the boundary lines of the houses, or have them kind of curl up around the front of the house. So that they're away from the street. Maybe you don't have that uniformity, but you're still adding to the overall canopy of the neighborhood, particularly through the use of hardwood trees, big softwood trees. You're getting more trees on the lots. They're just not right up on the street or within 10 feet of the sidewalk. And the idea being is, let the developer decide. Either they can do the street trees, or they can do, I just call them, you know, custom groves, but whatever we want to call it, the another option. And then again, having this list of, say you need to have multiple varieties, you can't just have one type of tree, the entire subdivision, because that's unhealthy. Again, we don't have to vote on this tonight, but these are kind of the thoughts that I had going through this, because we don't seem to like the uniform street tree approach.
Well, some do, some don't.
Some do, some don't. And a lot of the neighborhoods that we like now, including some that we live in, don't have really uniform street trees. They're trees that have been planted all along the boundaries, the front yards, the backyards, and they look nice. So maybe that's a better option sometimes.
I hadn't thought of an option like that, but that's, the only thing I would add to this is, I think, thinking about that house, there, I think we're looking for too many trees on a lot, or, I mean, I want to see trees there, but if you cluster them too close together, they just sort of wipes out the ground around it. But that these trees were planted on 50-foot increments, whatever the size of the lot is, or whatever the, you know, just setting it as a distance so the trees have enough room to grow, and also enough room to let the sun get in around the trees and get all around it. I'm thinking of some neighborhoods that I've visited, and after 20 years, I go, well, this must have sounded like a great idea when they did it, and I thought it was too, but now the trees are so overgrown that you know they're going to be cut down. They're so big, and they're so close to on top of each other. But again, I guess that could come down to the type of tree.
Well, certainly, deserves some attention on what they do plant there. I know that.
So we can pass this. Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Two sections. Where you talk about the list of species of every name given, I didn't start unless otherwise approved by the planning board. So just in the future, if another tree comes up that you guys like and someone proposes, you have the ability to do that. And at the very end, talking about, right now, it says you have to put them in a 10-foot wide strip unless an alternative design is approved by the planning board.
Yeah, I think that's probably the thing, is design approved by the planning board. I know you have a copy of this, and I went over this with Dan earlier. I mean, and there's a list of trees that they suggest, and the trees need to be botanical names rather than common names. For instance, a plane tree could be a sycamore maple, or it could be a maple, acis, saccharum, or it could be, you know, the,
Well, there's no urgency to this, you know.
right. So we could work out some of that, and there's possibilities of having smaller trees such as crab trees, flowering crabs, and even dogwoods and things like that out in the front yard, rather than have a plane tree, sycamore, that gets quite large eventually. All right, well, we want to do that one. You want?
I think Rick has made some good
Yeah.
points here, so I think that needs to be, you know, worked into this whole section here.
Okay.
So we could pass this
Yeah.
and discuss it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate to be holding these people up here.
That's, I know, go right ahead
If,
with
if
the
it's
next one.
okay, maybe I'll just work with the chairman to put together some language that we can look at.
Because,
So,
you know, and broad clearing of land in some cases is necessary when you're changing grades and stuff like that.
Sometimes, yeah.
I know in my front yard, I mean, we had trees that were, believe it or not, and they were still alive, and they were 6 feet buried in the ground. I mean, it's just amazing, but
so we could pass this to the motion, and we could discuss this.
most of the case, after the people have lived in, they find out the down trees are dying, and they're cutting them down, but, all right,
Okay, you all set on that one?
yes,
We're going to approve it, or?
the fire department, next.
Yeah.
Motion to.
Motion
approve
to, we'll,
So we're going to move this on, the tree
Or
one.
you want to postpone it to discuss it the
I'm
next
not
one?
sure I'd put it, I don't know, I think we can do it the next meeting.
All right.
We have something more.
Okay.
We're just gonna
Okay.
do nothing tonight.
Okay, the section 219R would be deleted, and this requires fire alarm boxes, which
They don't, they just don't, they
are
don't,
passé. Okay, so that would be deleted.
the hard wire doesn't work, and we have too many problems with
Yeah.
the, so motion to eliminate that.
Just very quickly, is that,
Yes, I support that. We're trying to get away from the municipal system. The wired system is done. We're starting to phase back from the radio system because it's getting expensive to maintain.
Okay.
So we're trying not to add into that system anymore.
Motion made, seconded. Motion made and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved.
Okay, the next section pertains to curbing, and the Public Works Department is concerned because their budget does not provide for replacing granite curbing, although this is a requirement by the board for new subdivisions. So what is proposed here is to have to have granite curbing in the requirement for subdivisions, okay?
Well, the first part is the language from the fire department to widen the roadway to 8. Number 4?
I skipped over 4.
Oh, I'm sorry. The fire department would like section 207B, travel way of 16 feet exclusive of berms and curbs. The fire department would like language added to widen the roadway to 18 feet exclusive of berms or curbs, as narrow roadways will make it difficult to get through cars if are parked on both sides of the road. This would also they would also like solid paved circles to be included in the design versus cul-de-sacs or islands or roundabouts.
On that issue, the 18-foot is very much necessary. If you go to Veterans Place, that is really difficult. I mean, the ambulance is wider than the fire engine, and it's impossible to get down there when they're parked on both sides. So that's something that definitely needs to be done. As far as the cul-de-sacs are concerned, the problem with the cul-de-sacs when they're all open is they can't get plowed. So you've got to send in equipment after the storm is over, front-end loaders and things like that, to clear it all out. It's a tremendous amount of snow, which one of the problems we have with cul-de-sacs, used to have a frontage, was straight line, but now it's curved line. So people that live in that cul-de-sac have so much snow in their front yard, it's after the front-end loaders come in there, it's horrendous. So I know, as far as I'm concerned, we need to have a circular in the center, but it should be made, perhaps maybe the width of the road is different there, but, so that the plow can go around a couple of times, but just a wide open space, we did that, and we had all sorts of problems and all sorts of complaints, neighbors and the DPW and everything else. So I understand where the chief is coming from on this, but I also understand the maintenance of a big, wide blacktop area.
Is there a width that would work?
I think we can sit down and talk about that. Absolutely, it's gonna be wide. In Veterans Place, you're absolutely correct. That's the one that we discovered, and it wasn't really until it was built, just how difficult that is. It's narrow, and any vehicle, a personal vehicle parked on the side of that essentially blocks that for any apparatus getting through. And you're right, the ambulance is the widest, everybody thinks it's the ladder truck, it's not, that's the narrowest, but that's the longest. So, in that event, perhaps if we can make those cul-de-sacs smaller, we just want to be able to get around them too. Ideally, if it's a big giant paved circle, that's perfect for us. However, hearing the snow removal, I get it, so maybe there's some kind of compromise we can come up with.
We need drivers that can go in circles by themselves without circles.
Or maybe if that circle's smaller, or, yeah, as long as we can get around it. Okay, because once one vehicle's parked there, it's kind of shut down at that point, nobody can pass that. As needed.
So I just had, it was widen the roadway to 18 feet from 16 feet. So 16 feet, you're talking about two 8-foot lanes? Or is it 16 feet each lane?
No,
No, the whole length of
The whole
width
of the road,
Yeah.
because a 8-foot lane is pretty narrow, and even a 9-foot lane is pretty narrow. I mean, I'd like to see it go to 20. I mean, at least that would be a 10-foot.
25 is even better, but.
Well, no, I'm just thinking most
Well, is
traffic,
18 enough?
most traffic lanes are 12-foot. I'm just thinking in my experience. So that would make the roadway 24-foot wide. But even if we compromised and went to 10, 9 just seems to be a very narrow road to me.
In the height of the curb, that's also affecting us. If there was no curb or no curb, we could kind of go off a little bit.
Right.
We're barricaded, and we really can't come over that. That curb is very high in that.
If I recall the wording of your regulations, this section talks about the minimum traveled way for, this is not a new subdivision road. So like, for example, if you're trying to establish frontage on an existing lot, one of the triggers is what frontage has to be on a publicly accepted or a minimum traveled way with a, right now it says a pavement of 16 feet. That's what you change, making those things 18 feet. Your subdivision laws still say that curb-to-curb pavement is typically 26 feet
Yeah.
on a side street.
Hmm.
That's not changing here. This is kind of helping those kind of new, like, what was a dirt road is now going to be a paved road, it has to be at least 18 feet. I concur with the chief. I would love to see this town abandon the philosophy that you have to have granite curb on the left and right side of every road that you build in Abington, especially the side streets. If you go to almost every other town surrounding us, including the wealthier ones, you see Cape Cod berm, you don't see granite curbing, especially in the centers, because once you put curbing in the radii and in the circle, then the fire truck can't get up, or they don't want to pop the tire on the curb. If you utilize Cape Cod berming on side streets, I think it looks nicer, it's more residential, it's not as commercial looking. On Route 18 or a commercial development, you may call for it, but I would really like the board to consider getting rid of the requirement of granite curbing on every new street in the town of Abington. And I think the DPW has expressed that same concern to this board, that they'd like to see you abandon it, because at some point in time in the future, it's the town that has to pay to reset and replace that granite curbing, which is extremely expensive for both the builder and the town.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I also understand how much better the road stands up when there's a granite curb, especially when it's set in cement. It's permanent, and the roads last a lot longer, and people aren't driving on your lawn or on your sidewalk and so forth. So
With all due
I'm,
respect, I don't think it has any difference on the roadway. The roadway's still built the same, the drainage is still.
the roadway isn't built the same. I mean, I would disagree with you. The granite curbing holds the road up much better on the sides, even with a Cape Cod berm.
Sounds like we're having two discussions here.
But well,
Put it on the hearing date, we'll talk.
I know some of the cul-de-sacs with the big island in the middle, the roadway's so narrow. I had an experience where I had my truck parked in the cul-de-sac, bus couldn't get around.
yeah, and I think you bring up a good.
The wider roadway.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to, on the inside cul-de-sac, not to have a granite, and I can understand the reason for that.
Well,
Yes.
maybe the road would be a little wider than the cul-de-sac with the island. Because it narrows down to one lane, basically, when you get into the cul-de-sac. It's no longer 20 feet, it's only one travel lane.
So,
B1.
I've been looking around about this as well. I know that I hate to always bend to like a DP, I don't mean to insult them, but DPH, because if, like you said, if anything, everything would be paved, there'd be no trees, there'd be no curbs, it would just look like something that you can maintain very easily. And I understand he's come from a budget point of view, but coming from a residential point of view, living, I agree that the neighborhoods with the curbs stand up so much better. And the other ones, the grass gets worn down up to the berm because cars are parking up on the side of the road. I constantly see it in my neighborhood. And I would, I just think we're doing a better thing for them by keeping the granite curbing. But I agree that there are cases where we did it in one of the subdivisions up behind where Gray's Movers was, where Rips was. But where was that the one I'm thinking of? Where we did the inside curb as berm, asphalt berm, and then we did the outside in granite. And that was for the sake of paving, that was the sake of paving too. For plowing,
I don't know how you want to,
Put it off next week, next
Yeah.
month?
I'd like to put it off.
Shall we put it on for,
we can,
discuss it for,
yeah,
In March.
why don't we redo it? Is that what you want to do?
Sure.
Put it on March, but not take a vote tonight.
This is B1.
public hearing to end
Yes, yes. Dan, we gotta move this.
Yeah, just, let me just take these, that's the granite bounds.
Yeah, that's where it goes from, it's 5-inch and this problem getting 5-inch granite bounds, but they can get 4-inch granite bounds.
Sounds good to me.
I'd like to see it stay at 4-inch, or go to 4-inch. Is that
Sounds good to me.
okay?
So moved.
So
Move
moved.
that to
Second.
4
I'd second
inch.
it.
All those in favor of 4-inch, say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Go ahead, okay.
Okay. And this last one pertains to street signs where there is a private street. What this would require is that private ways shall be identified by a street sign in red in color and have the wording private way on top of the street sign so that Public Works would know, residents would know that this is a private way and not subject to plowing, etc.
That would let the highway department know that they're not supposed to be plowing down there, which we,
I like the idea of putting the private way on top, making it a scarlet letter, I'm not quite sure about, or keep it maybe green, but the private way on top, or even if the sign's white, I'd be less concerned about that, having it red.
Okay.
I think it's a little,
Well, what's your pleasure?
but yeah.
okay, vote.
White sign? White street sign,
That's fine.
white in color.
It'd be something new for them to learn, because I don't know if they have those kind of signals in other towns where you think about looking up at the street sign to identify should I plow that or not. I don't know if.
I'm okay
with the idea.
just giving them green, but just putting the private way up top.
Okay.
So we'll, Motion to put that
Some
out
people
for
that
the
buy a
hearing.
house don't
Motion made.
know that they live on a private.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Dan, we all done with
I'm
them?
all set.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
I don't know whether my term here is going to expire. but
I hope not.
I think
Weird.
I'm pretty much in with you guys, so.
Well, thanks, Dan, for all your great work. It's been really great. Thank you for all your great work.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm prejudiced because you used to be my boss, but I think it's been great.
Public hearing on,
Thanks, Dan.
public hearing to reduce the number of, we have a thing that's advertised. Did we advertise that?
Yes.
Sean, did that get advertised, you know,
need
on the
this?
public hearing on,
Special permit?
on the special permit? Let's change the, we did, oh, great. Do you have a copy? I'll just want to read it. Liz usually has it right in front of me.
Yeah.
Thank you. The Abington Planning Board will hold a public hearing at Abington Town Offices, 500 Glenwood Way, Abington, Mass. On Monday, February 3rd, 2020, at 6:10 PM on the application of LPC Northeast LLC, 53 State Street, 8th floor, Boston, Mass. 02109, for a special permit to allow a reduced number of required parking spaces pursuant to Abington zoning bylaws, Chapter 1754-53. The property is owned by 700 Bedford Street LLC, 714 Bedford Street LLC, and Chris J. Dowdy, and care of Sean Riley, Esquire, P.O. Box 32032, Abington, Mass. 02351. The property is located on 700 Bedford Street on Assessors Map 4546, lots 112/6 and 7. Plans can be viewed at the town clerk's office, advertised in the Brockton Enterprise, Wayne T. Smith, Chairman, January 20th and 27th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have copies of the advertisement and the publications, which I'll deliver to Liz. My understanding, Liz is homesick tonight, the planning board secretary. For the record, my name is Attorney Sean Riley, 500 Washington Street, and I have a team of gentlemen here with me tonight, most of whom were here last month. This is regarding the proposed self-storage building at 700 Bedford Street, which is the corner of Bedford and Shar Avenue. We have our engineers here, our property owners, and also our traffic engineer. And I believe the town's traffic engineer, oh, there you are, Jeff, sorry, is also here. The traffic review engineer is here. The last meeting I thought was very productive. We had a lot of good feedback and input from the board and from the neighbors, which we then tried to update and generate a plan as quickly as possible to address some of those issues and then refile it in time to be here on the schedule tonight. And we were successful in doing that. Dave Johnson, on behalf of the town, I know has reviewed the updated plans and the engineering, but I know we've already been here for way too long, so I'll be as brief as possible. For those of you who are here, you already know where the property is, but based on the comments and the input from the neighbors and from the fire chief, the Shar Avenue driveway entrance has been eliminated on this revised plan. That's what we have submitted, that was what is pending before the board. And I should clarify, this hearing tonight is a continuation of the site plan approval hearing that started last month. And we also just opened a separate special permit hearing to allow us to reduce the number of parking spaces. Our zoning bylaw required us to put in more parking spaces than a storage building needs. And in order to have the board allow us to reduce the number of spaces and therefore reduce the amount of pavement, we have to file a separate request for a special permit. So both of those are pending before the board tonight. So really the only change that you might notice from last month to this month is probably a big change, which is the elimination of the driveway that used to exist here. There was concern from some of the Shar Ave neighbors that that might contribute to some queuing on Shar Avenue. Despite the fact that this will be a very, very, very low traffic generator, being a storage building, we did consult with the fire department, the fire chief, who's Chief Nuttall's here with me tonight, and he gave us the okay in his mind to eliminate the driveway, and that has been done. So this is what is before the board this evening. We have submitted with our prior application and our prior plans the landscaping plan, the photometric plans, the drainage plans, and I know Dave has reviewed them, and I'll let Dave speak to those. And also, this was the original design of the building, and the board asked, and the neighbors asked that it be changed, to have something more that might fit in. So what we did was try to put the roof line on it, like you've seen in, kind of like we've seen in the New England Art Building in Abington, kind of borrowing off that motif. With a storage building, kind of limited, you can't really make it a Cape Cod cottage look, but we changed the roof line, changed the exterior, and you'll see, maybe you can't see it from where you are, but we use the hardy plank, which is a kind of very durable clapboard type siding that will be added on portions of the building to make so that it's not just a sheet of masonry. I think it's a much more attractive building. We have a color that doesn't jump out at you or reflect sunlight, although I'm not getting anyone's way. And the orientation of the building has not changed. The office is still at the corner of Shaw Avenue and Bedford Street. And by eliminating that driveway on Shaw Avenue, we were able to add a little bit more landscaping on Shaw Avenue. Drainage still goes the same way, which is away where it goes now, actually. All the property from the Wheatley property and the Lampworks property, it's been a number of things. It all goes out to the rear into the wetlands, and that's where it will continue to go. There's no change to that. One of the other issues we were talking with our direct abutters, Mr. and Mrs. Adams, who live on Shaw Avenue. We have proposed to have a solid fence go along our driveway area. We have trees on their side of the fence, and one of the conditions we would suggest is that that fence be selected by, I'm going to say Mr. and Mrs. Adams, but I have a feeling it would be Mrs. Adams, will choose the design of the fence, the color of the fence, and I know Leanne is working on that, which we're more than happy to work with her with that final product. As I said, our engineers are here, our traffic engineers are here, but in the interest of time, perhaps it's better if we just go to your engineer for any of his review comments, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Dave?
Yeah, we reviewed the revised plans, and as my letter indicates, they've addressed the comments we had raised at the last meeting. I guess the only change in the plans that really needs to be looked at is that at the previous meeting, we questioned whether or not there was going to be any storage doors on the west or back side of the building. There were none shown on the previous plan. As part of this, they've added to the plans, there was an intent, I guess, even at the initial meeting to have doors on the back. Our only concern there with doors there was no place for parking. What we suggested that they look at is to reduce the pavement width for a one-way circulation pattern. Right now, they're proposing 29 feet of pavement, 25 feet of traveled way, and I think they had a 4-foot strip around the building for a total of 29 feet. We were suggesting that they narrow up the traveled way so that there's at least a 9 or 10-foot area so that you can parallel park along the face of the building in order to unload or load the things into the facility, rather than having somebody come in and perpendicular park and block the traveled way. So that was our suggestion that they look at, and I'll let them respond to whether or not they are heading that direction. So basically, narrow the travel way from 25 feet down to, say, 18 or 20, make it one way, and then take that pavement and create a 10-foot wide parallel. I think I think the subdivision, zoning bylaw only requires a 9-foot wide parallel space, 9 by 22. So people could pull in parallel to their building and unload and load, rather than trying to park perpendicular and block traffic.
How would that affect fire apparatus?
Well, I think you were just talking about an 18-foot, 20-foot travel way for a road. If you're talking about a 20-foot travel way for a one-way direction, Because I think their circulation pattern now is all clockwise.
And I apologize for not addressing this when I was standing up for the first time. What Dave is talking about is in the rear of the building, you come out the rear of the building, you have a 25-foot wide driveway, which we're required to have, and then there's an additional 4 feet that's striped along the building, where someone can kind of pull over next to the building while they're emptying into their garage. There's also stripes on the other sides. It's 10 feet over here, and it's 6 feet and 5 feet on the other side, just to give more maneuverability and wiggle room. In addition to that issue, right. Our engineers ran the turning radiuses for the Abington Fire Department's larger vehicles to make sure that they had no problems circulating around the property as is. So given that, we did not want to shrink the width of the pavement in the rear, nor did we want to try to maintain the 25-foot width and bump out that hatched area another 6 feet, because that would just push the pavement closer to our abutter and have less landscaping there. Honestly, because of the use that's being proposed, the risk that someone would be pulling over to park while they're getting into their or out of their storage unit on the outside, and then having a vehicle come one way and a vehicle come the other way all at the same time in this site is incredibly small. And even if it did happen, there's room for one to stop and another one to go around. And I just passed out to the board related to that. I took some aerial photos, I think, Google Earth, of the existing self-storage building on Route 18 in Abington at the Weymouth line, and on the other side is the existing self-storage units on Route 18 in the Whitney line. And it just shows you their layouts, one of which obviously was approved by the planning board many years ago, and the pavement that's between the buildings. And on their set, they have the one-story buildings, but there's a row of, there's 3 or 4 rows of buildings with pavement in between. And I think you'll see it is not 25 feet plus 10. It looks like just eyeball, it's about 25 feet. We don't want to put in too much pavement here because that just has less lawn and more drainage. I think what we proposed, most importantly, was to satisfy the fire department. The other issue I failed to recognize or to mention was, under our zoning bylaw, we're allowed to have a under our zoning bylaw, we can have a 30-foot wide driveway, but Mass Highway, Mass DOT, will only allow us to have a 24-foot wide curb cut unless we file for an exemption and give them good reasons. So we show what complies with Mass DOT, a 24-foot wide driveway. The fire chief has sent us an email, and I've been talking with the fire chief, and I want to speak for you, chief. We would like to get the 30-foot wide driveway also, and he has offered to write a letter on the project's behalf to submit to Mass DOT after this hearing. I know the planning board cannot change what Mass DOT regulates, only Mass DOT can do that. So one of my suggestions, and I put it in writing, is to have a condition that if you were looking to approve this layout, that one of the conditions would be that the applicant would file the necessary paperwork and plans with Mass DOT in conjunction and cooperation with the chief, so that we could have, and here it's shown, a 30-foot wide opening, which would make it easier for our engines, fire engines, to come in, especially if there were hoses spread throughout. In the unlikely event there was a fire in this building, but we plan for the worst and we hope for the best. So the board can't approve the 30 feet, but I think we can make it a condition that we shall apply for the 30 feet. And if Mass Highway does grant it, and we expect that they will, with the fire chief's support, we would then simply just submit an updated site plan to the planning board for your records to show that change. But in all, we would prefer to keep the layout as it is. We think there's sufficient drive space around the building, and it's a safe building with very low traffic. And now all traffic will be in and out of Route 18.
Anything else?
No, my suggestion was to reduce the thing.
Yeah, I know, and that would require one-way traffic, and then it gets kind of difficult as to which way do you go, because that would force either people to go this way and then make potentially a U-turn coming out, or people to go this way and coming out. At least trucks or vehicles or U-Haul can maneuver which way is ever safest, depending on which way they're heading, north or south. gives them the ability to do so. If any sort of issues come up, the manager of the property can always dictate left turn only, right turn only. They would do that for their own benefit, for risk aversion and all. But this layout gives us the opportunity to see what works in the most the safest way.
So the only other thing is I've given you 7 conditions for you to consider as part of any approval, in addition to standard conditions.
And these are the 2 conditions that I had suggested. The one being that we would apply to Mass DOT for the reasons I just stated, and the other one being that we would work with Mr. and Mrs. Adams to install the fence in a design and color style that they desired. It would be a solid fence as required and as shown on the plan.
So, you originally proposed 27 spaces. How many are you proposing now?
I believe there was a reduction in 10. Sorry? 17 are proposed now, yes. 8 in the front and 9 in the front.
I just want to make sure, Dave, that in your review, you agree that the stormwater is going to be pushed back towards that back corner. There's a line in here about, under the new conditions, there'll actually be less water directed off the site towards the neighbors than currently exists now, because it'll all be directed back there through stormwater and.
Right, it was always directed back there.
Right. But it's gonna be a different topography, so,
I'm not sure what the question is.
so it says right
The
here,
design hasn't changed in terms of stormwater from the previous,
right,
design, which put all the stormwater in the rear of the site.
right, it just says in here, it should be noted that under the proposed site conditions, significantly less water will be directed from the subject property to the residential abutters. And I just wanna make sure you agree with that if you didn't write that. Okay.
I think one of the changes has been, the water that fell on the Lampworks property and all was always going out this way. The water that fell on Wheatley's existing parking lot, some of it shed out onto Shar Avenue
Right.
down the street. That will now be eliminated and collected, and it'll all go where the rest of it goes now.
They also added, as we suggested, at the toe of the slopes, which were relatively steep, we flattened out the slopes and they've added, at the toe of the slopes, crushed stone infiltration drains to intercept the runoff and channel that into the ground to reduce the potential for leveling on the site. Whereas before, they had the toe of the slope, I think, right at the property line,
Okay.
pretty close to the property line.
So, I'm not so much worried about the width of the pavement, because I think it's going to be minimal compared to the scope of the building itself. I don't think you're gonna notice the pavement, whether or not there's 20 feet or 18 feet. Where you are gonna notice the big 3-story gray building. The trees that are being proposed along the street side, the Bedford Street, how tall are these that are being proposed?
I'm looking over to the engineer, so he's got the details.
On the Bedford Street side of it?
Yep.
They are 3 to 3.5 inch caliper, so they're some maples and elm trees. Yeah, those are 3.5 inch caliper in the height. I'm guessing somewhere between 15 and 20 feet high.
15 to 20 feet. Okay.
And they'll grow.
I'd be closer to 10 to 12 feet high.
10 to 12? Well, also 10 to 12 when they're put in the ground, and then they grow to 20 feet. Okay. All right. Come back to that I'd like to hear from Miss Adams to see if she's happy with kind of how things have been arranged in terms of how that border will look. Is it possible to hear from her?
Mrs. Adams?
Are you happy with how things have been resolved and left with, in terms of the boundary between the proposed development and your property? Are you okay with what they're proposing? The treatment, the fence, the trees, landscaping?
I guess so, yes.
I mean, you don't have to be if you don't want to be, but it just,
It's hard just to look at that and to imagine what it's gonna be like. So,
We had tried to preserve some of the existing trees, and we will be planting other trees. And as I mentioned, if you look at the plan itself, the fence is going to be, the trees are going to be on your side of the fence.
oh, so you don't wanna put them.
Well, we'll like them on your side if you like. Most people like the trees there, not the wall of the fence. Plus, by doing that, the fence is up at our driveway level. There's a slope that goes down, your house is lower. So by putting the fence up on top of the hill, it does more screening for you. And then, so there'll be more of the existing trees on the slope down. I know that if you're not happy, I'm gonna hear about it, so we'll make sure that you're happy. So, whatever it takes, we will do. You are, the abutter, the direct abutter, along with the gentleman behind you. And the same thing goes.
so my concern is that the ground level for this is going to be 4 to 6 feet higher than the surrounding properties in some areas. It's kind of almost gonna be up on a little bit of a platform, because it's a little bit of a hill right there.
Yeah.
So now you're starting already a few feet higher than the surrounding houses, now you're going up 30 feet. And I appreciate the
building's going up.
yeah, the building's going up 30 feet, and I appreciate the efforts that were going into went into it architecturally, thank you for going back. But we're still talking a building that's gonna dominate the area around it. Even if it's 20-foot trees, you're still talking 15 feet above that tree line, you're gonna have the top of the building. And same thing with Miss Adams, she's going to be looking up at the building. So it's even higher than just if it was on completely level ground. So that's where my concern is either getting taller trees. Like I said, I like what's been done. I have a couple notes. I'd trust the architect more than anything, but is it possible to get more of the windows along that higher level, because that's what people are gonna see rather than just the solid gray? I'm very much concerned about how that top of that building is going to stand out in the entire neighborhood area. That's my note.
One of the questions, you were talking about the trees on Bedford Street.
Can you have your name, please, ma'am?
Joanne Griffin.
And your address?
I live on Barry Road in Shar Ave.
The street address?
104 Shar Ave. Are there going to be trees on Shar Ave also?
Yes. This is Shar Avenue right
Right.
here. So you can see, the circles are the different sizes and species of trees. So there's a number of trees. This is Leanne's house.
Right.
So there's a number of trees here now, and then there'll be trees on Route 18. And on all sides there'll be trees.
Okay. And how wide is the landscaping on Shar Ave prior to the driveway? I mean, the pavement before the building?
The building itself, just to give you a relation,
Yeah.
is 50 feet off of this line of Leanne.
Right.
It's a little bit more. He's looking at it now, but I'm gonna say it's probably.
That edge of pavement along Shaw Ave is probably 40 feet off the property line.
So there's 40 feet of grass and trees from our pavement to sidewalk.
So from the building or from
No.
the pavement?
No, there's 40
Okay.
feet of landscape.
Okay, the landscaping, okay. And how far is the pavement back from Bedford Street?
Here,
Yeah, how far back is the building?
oh, the building?
Yeah,
The building is 59.2 feet.
okay.
For our sight lines, yeah.
Right, just trying in my,
20 back,
trying
yeah.
to figure.
We looked at that, so we could ask.
Sean, the engineer might correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is when they eliminated the parking to save pavement and so forth. They increased the amount of landscaping between Shar Avenue and the edge of pavement. That's correct?
Correct, yes,
My
there's just
understanding.
more trees
So
added.
that's the
Right.
trade-off here with less parking, is that they've increased the open space on Shar Avenue.
Right, well, Mr. Johnson's really, there used to be parking here in the original plan, so we would have 20-foot spaces plus the driveway, then the landscaping. So we've essentially gained another 20 feet of landscaping, roughly.
Yes, Mrs. Adams.
I just want to say thank you very much to the board and to everybody. I really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to have input and all that, and I really, really do appreciate that. And also care very much about my neighbors that live right across the street from me and for the business on the corner. You know, so I feel for them too, because they used to live in the yard and, you know, home, and now they're going to be, so. Thank you, sir. Your concerns that they have me are also very important.
Right.
But again, I appreciate very much what you're doing. Just care about them too.
Yes, a
Capilano with Lincoln Property Company. I think
little louder, please, too.
Yeah, I think Mr. Collins' comment with the windows is well taken, and they're there for aesthetic value from the outside. They don't do anything for storage on the inside.
Right.
So I don't see any reason why we wouldn't take windows that we have on the first or second floor, primarily on the second floor, and put them up higher. So they'll be more visible to the area that won't be covered by, probably won't be covered by trees because it goes up 30 feet high. So we'd be happy to do that.
I have a concern with that, and with, is that the internal lighting, if you raise the windows up higher even now, actually originally, I must have misunderstood this, but I thought there was only storage openings on two sides of the building, not in the back, not on the other side. So are there windows on the other side as well, on the back side that we can't see, facing Linda's house? And there, no, it's just a, it's not a flat wall, because they're garage doors. On the first floor.
We're glad to put some windows on the top floor so that it looks more pleasing.
I've actually seen on some of these buildings in other towns where they have what look to be windows, but they're actually fake windows. It's a glass panel up on the building
Sure.
with a
It's
frame and
a
everything.
spandrel panel. But
Yeah,
what I'm concerned about is
nice.
if they're that, but if they're internally lit, that would be a
Right.
whole different animal.
I don't think they would be internally lit. There'll be
They're
there'll be
just-
windows that are on storage compartments, so.
So they're
the only
still
time the light
false.
would go on if someone came in to use their storage unit, so.
Yeah.
Very unlikely.
What I'm looking is at the U-Haul place up the street, made their building into a giant sign.
Yeah.
And they use the inside corridors to emphasize, they lit up the inside corridors, so all that painting comes through. And basically, kind of bypassed the sign by law by turning the whole building into a sign. We don't want this to be a beacon at the end of the street.
Not our intention,
Yeah.
not at all.
Thank you.
There's a question? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Mrs. Brown, and I'm at 84 Shaw Avenue, and I still have a concern with regard to the water. Unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, they paved our area, the street, and then after that, I don't think they finished it off quite right or whatever. We ended up getting really flooded this past fall and summer. And my concern is still, even though you do have some added, looks like soil and whatnot, there's still 3 stories of building. That's a big building. You have a lot of asphalt. And I'm concerned that I could end up getting a flood at some point because of the table that's been changed. I would like to see them do a soil test on my property so that if in the future there's some kind of a problem that develops, that I get flooded, you're gonna be made aware of it.
Maybe I could ask the engineer to explain more in detail about where the roof water and the pavement water gets collected, where it goes, to give you a little bit more assurances. We can't help or address any water that's running down Shar Avenue. And I used to live off of Shar Avenue as a kid, I'm very familiar with it. We won't be able to address that, that's the public way, but I think we can assure you that we're gonna collect and contain anything that lands on this property
Correct, yeah, so anything that lands within the limits of the pavement, and even on this side, the pavement itself is sloped down a little bit more so than the street is. So anything that lands on the green space around here is actually gonna be directed onto the pavement, where everything's collected by catch basins, the roof drains go underground, and everything is piped back around here to this basin, which overflows into the wetland system, which is where the drainage system goes today. We're actually collecting more water, taking some water that under existing conditions does go on the Shaw Ave, and we're collecting that and bringing it all back into the
Well, if the
basin.
drainage system gets plugged up because of weeds or whatever, and you get a backup, then what happens? I mean, I'm the one that's gonna be affected, Leanne's gonna be affected, we're the houses that are gonna be affected, and my neighbor here.
It's
And so
all,
I think that it should be made aware, we are making you aware right now,
yeah, I think
that there
Mrs.
is a problem, and if it continues after the building, then you people should be held responsible
Miss-
for it.
Mrs. Brown, the water, you'll have less water in the future than you have right now. Because
Hopefully
what is
so.
where Wheatley's office used to be, all that water would end up going out into Shore Avenue. Now it's all being picked up and going out the waterway out behind the building. So you would have less water on Shore Avenue than you do now.
And hopefully that's correct, and that's the way it's going to work.
I-
But if it doesn't,
Water
I want
doesn't,
it made
water won't go
public
up,
on the record.
water won't go uphill.
Okay,
That's-
I just want it on the record that
Now-
if there is a problem,
Now, there may be a 4-inch rainstorm, and everyone's yard's gonna be flooded, but it won't be because of this development, is what we're being told by our engineers, their engineers.
that-
And everything.
Right, exactly.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, we're also required to submit an O&M, we'll have an O&M manual. at the
I'm
property.
sorry, I can't hear you.
We'll have an O&M manual at the property that's operating and maintenance. And in that manual, all of those catch basins are always maintained and always cleaned, so that the water does go in and goes where it's supposed to go.
Okay,
You have an
Yes,
order of
ma'am.
conditions yet?
Excuse me, Dave?
I was just asking if they had an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission.
I believe we're scheduled for a hearing with the Conservation Commission on this coming Monday, the 10th. We wanted to make sure that the engineer was updated before we submitted the plan to them.
So the 100-foot line goes through that back storage building, correct? The 100-foot buffers line?
Correct, yeah.
The buffer does, not the wetlands.
Right. So if, obviously, if conservation has a problem with that, that'll be changed.
Yeah, we don't expect a problem with conservation because we're actually removing a lot of pavement out, what exists out back now. So there's gonna be less pavement out back there. And there is an existing retention pond out behind the furniture of the, what's the name of the place now? What's Lamport's, I always call it Lamport's. Dempsey's. There is an existing retention pond where the water went, the retention pond holds the water, lets it settle and lets it bleed out into the wetlands. We are actually updating, enlarging, and improving that, so it can hold more water than it did before. It cleans it, lets it settle, and then goes out the same way to the wetlands. So this will be an improvement.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm attorney Susan Ryan, 676 Bedford Street. I own the commercial property on the corner of Shaw Ave and Route 18. While I appreciate the fact of the trees and everything, my major concern is that of safety. It is a demon of a situation there, and you're talking about putting in all of these trees, and I'm wondering and concerned about the obstruction of vision on Route 18. It is bad enough now, even with the flashing light. I am constantly hearing crashes outside. I'm constantly calling everything there, and I'm wondering about the visibility, et cetera. I can speak personally that there are people who try to bypass the light, who go in my property off of Shaw Avenue and go through my parking lot coming out the other way. And I'm envisioning that if the vision and the ability to look down the road at Route 18 is a problem, it's going to be my property that's going to be burdened by the traffic. And finally, I am concerned about the aesthetics of the building. I get you're trying to do that, but fortunately for me, my business is extremely busy during the day, and I don't have to worry about the glare of lights or anything else coming from that building. But to me, it's like almost like a castle, if you will, arising on there. And I know that the land is going to be elevated and it's going to be quite high. So from my perspective, it's largely that of safety. I've owned that piece of property for 25 years, and I think it's a real concern, Shaw Ave and Route 18, and I'd ask you to consider that.
Could we hear from our traffic engineer a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. 2 questions for you. First, just to address her comments about would the placement of the trees, in your opinion, impact the sight lines? That's the first question.
So, and for the record, Jeffrey Durkin, Vanessa Associates. So my opinion is the trees are outside of the sightlines, but I think there's a couple of things we've asked the applicant to do with respect to their driveway. We've asked them to actually have a site plan. They verified that they have well in excess of the minimum sightlines that are required at their driveway, even with the placement of the trees for safety. So we've asked them to actually just draw the site triangles in the plan, which shows you where they are, but it also from the zoning enforcement officer's perspective, they will make sure that there's nothing placed in those site triangles. In fact, we've asked them to add a note on a plan saying within those site triangle areas, nothing shall be placed that will obscure the sightlines. You could take that further and just ask them to show the site triangles at that intersection as well. It's easy for them to do, and do the same, add the same note to say that nothing be placed in the site triangle areas. It gets easy enough for them to do. It's our opinion that nothing that they're doing in this site, even the planting of this landscaping, is going to inhibit sightlines. So we're comfortable with that, but I think just to reassure everyone, just have them put the site triangle on the plan with the note that we've already asked them to do for that intersection as well, and it's just kind of belt and suspenders on that.
Okay. The other, I think there's a note in your report that says Shaw Ave is a level of service F.
Both approaches, that's correct.
Both approaches.
Yeah.
Is that true basically for every intersection along Route 18 from 139 down to 123?
It absolutely is. Unless there's a traffic signal, all driveways and side streets will operate at a level of service of F.
Okay.
So when we look at that in relation to the project, I think what we pointed out in our last review letter is that the removal of the Shaw Avenue driveway to this property is a significant improvement with respect to the potential impacts on Shaw Avenue resulting from the project. Not only that, taking it a step further, they're minimizing curb cuts on Route 18. So I think as we're looking at it from a safety perspective, the project itself is a benefit from a safety perspective in that they're closing driveways, so the potential for conflicts or the number of conflict points has been removed, limited to one driveway location. That driveway location now on Route 18 has been moved as far away from Shaw Avenue as possible from the standpoint of serving this property. So I think there's a significant number of benefits just from the standpoint of closing up the driveways and removing the driveway from Shaw Avenue that result in some safety benefits as well as reduced impacts on Shaw Avenue.
Finally, in your opinion, could a Mayflower moving van get into and access this site
Yes.
safely?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think to that point though as well, and this goes to Attorney Riley's initial opening comments on the driveway width. You know, I'll defer to their traffic engineer to look at this as well, but standard Mass DOT commercial driveways are 30-foot wide openings. Residential driveways are 24-foot wide. Those are their standard guidelines. You can ask for wider driveways as long as you demonstrate that it will work in a safe and efficient manner. So a 30-foot wide driveway for a commercial opening is standard from Mass DOT's perspective. Obviously, we would like driveways as narrow as possible. However, speed and volume on Route 18 and the need to accommodate the vehicles you described as well as the chief's vehicle. 30 foot is what you want to have here to be able to get in and out of that site because it not only accommodates those larger size vehicles, but as we're looking at it again from a safety perspective, we want to get the vehicles off of Route 18 and into the site as safely and efficiently as possible. If you narrow those driveways, you cause those vehicles to have to really slow down. And in the case of the fire apparatus as well as larger trucks, they have to swing wide to get in there. We don't want that.
So the 30-foot wide standard Mass DOT commercial opening is safe and efficient and accommodates the chief's vehicle as well as any larger vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
Traffic engineer. Is
Through the
your
chair.
stuff,
You can do it through the chair.
Tom Tashton, 130 Shore Ave.
You can ask the questions to me, not to worry. Yeah.
Okay, as you're pointing out and talking about everything, we're looking at a 2D drawing. Have you gone over and actually looked at Shore Ave?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. The raise in, or decline coming off of 18 in elevation, they're gonna have to raise their thing going back a couple of 100 feet to where it's gonna be 6 feet high. So as you're coming up, you're gonna be looking down, basically looking at their driveway and hopefully coming up and looking down the street. Right now where it is with the Wheatley building is, which would be right about there. We had someone putting a school open house sign there, okay? And it caused havoc, because you would be pulling up, the street sign was only that big, but it was right at your height as you're looking down the street, you know? How far back are the trees, because they'll be that big around, looking right at the front of your car can't go out onto 18, you're gonna get the front of it taken off. So you're pulling back, you're looking down a line of trees, which now instead of being, looking at them, they won't be in line, they'll be like offset, making a fence almost as you're looking down. If you have 6 of them, now that 6 or 8 inch tree times 4 is gonna be 32 inches across as you're looking from a lower perspective of the street. How far back are they gonna be? How far off the street? Because all that's gonna add a fencing as you're looking down it.
So a couple of things. So I know what you're talking about with the site-wise, but as you're coming up to the intersection, I mean, there's a sidewalk, there's other things along the front of the site. Those have to meet what's there today, because you have a 6-inch curve on Route 18 and then a sidewalk. So as they develop their site, as you get closer to Route 18, it's gonna be pretty close to the existing grade that's there, because their driveway also has to match the Route 18 grade. So,
Yes,
so
that's
as we're looking
that's
at,
on the.
Let him finish, let him finish.
so as we're looking at that, and now you're talking about the trees placed along the frontage, as you just approach.
Yeah.
So if you're a driver, you're sitting back in this direction
Yeah.
here, right? And you're looking in this direction here,
Yeah.
and it forms a triangle. So
Yeah.
that triangle, as you're looking in this direction here, you're not looking through all of those trees. And the trees are only 3-inch caliper, I think you heard. So they don't pose a continuous obstruction such as a fence that you're talking about. They don't. So what I've suggested, and the experience you have with the sign, is that the closer these objects are to you as you're exiting, so the closer they get to Shaw Avenue, then they start to present an obstruction to you. The further away they are, they don't pose as much of an obstruction to you. So what I've suggested is that to make sure the situation with the sign and the trees being really close to you, is that they actually put the driver where you're talking about, that you're sitting looking, and physically draw that triangle. And then what that'll do is ensure that nothing is placed in that area, but also from the standpoint of the trees that you're talking about, if there's a line of those trees within that triangle, they can adjust them now. And the nice thing is they're not there now. So
Yeah.
what you're concerned about, if we put that triangle on there, let's make sure it's designed correctly so you don't get those, the fence thing. So if they do that, then if they've got to adjust the tree, we can do it now. But you can't see it until they put that triangle, because then you can actually look at the plan yourself and go, oh, geez, there's the trees along that line, and that's the exact fence thing I was talking about. But if they show it now, we can move the trees back so they're not in there. But it also allows, if you call because someone put a sign there and you can't see, they'll have a plan that shows that site triangle, and then the zoning enforcement officer can go out there and say, that's in the site triangle, it's gotta be out of there. Because there's gonna be a note on the plan that says nothing can go in that triangle. but you want it as well on the plan, so then you can also see and say, there's not supposed to be anything in there, and those trees aren't supposed to be in there, but you want to see the triangle on the plan, and then make those adjustments to the trees so you don't get that fence effect.
And my next question, this one is Vince, the
Good.
property here is gonna be, here is gonna be approximately 6 feet high. So any water that falls in this is naturally gonna have to run downhill, which will run it downhill onto Shore Ave, adding, it won't run downhill?
It's not going that way, it's going the other way.
So it's gonna go this way?
It's gonna go toward that, it's like what we've been explaining since we got here.
No, there's two different things happening. There's water hitting the asphalt, and that's just going the other way. The other way, the water's hitting the grass and getting absorbed.
Anything hanging on the grass, this way, because unless there's a wall that's gonna be 6 foot tall in this corner, it's gonna have to grade from.
Yeah, we don't need to use a
down
lot.
to
We don't
street
need use it. Sean?
If you want to speak, it's not all sheeting towards there. And before you start, one big difference right now is that recently is there's pavement that sheets towards Shore Ave. When it rains, it flows. By putting in loam and soil and grass, when it rains, most of it's absorbed. Will some flow to the street? Yes, but the majority is directed and slopes towards our pavement. Goes that way.
Yeah, so while it will be 6 feet higher, mostly back down here, as we get closer to Shaw Ave, it's actually not, that much higher than the existing grade is. So anything that falls in this corner will likely sheet back out on the pavement. And anything that does sheet off, this way, we do have the infiltration trenches shown at the bottom of the slope, which will give the water an opportunity to get in a stone trench and infiltrate back into the ground. Like I said earlier, we are putting less water onto Shaw Ave than there is today. So there will be a reduction in water that does get there.
This part right here, what Route 18 right now is 5 to 6 feet above Shore Ave right here, right? So are you cutting down on the property line here, or are you raising the property back there?
In this corner, it will be a bit lower than it is today. Once you get back here, the grade today, it slopes, this is the high point, it slopes back to here. Here, we will be lowering the grade. Once you get sort of back into this area is where you're starting to fill a little bit to level out the site.
But I think the green area that's kind of around by Shaw Ave, a lot of that green is level with where the street is now, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So the sloping is only really if you could see it, there's very small lines right along the edge of the pavement. That's where the slope is. And then there's 5, 6, 10 feet of green space landscaping. Is that, am I reading this correctly?
Along Shaw.
Yeah, like that area right there, that's how wide is that green area?
This is, 30 to 50 feet wide.
Okay.
This line here is the 40-foot.
That house right there, that's Leanne Adams' house. So basically, the building is gonna be right in line with the front, that's the front of her house right there. Here's the front of the building, so the building is gonna be as far back as her house is off the street back.
Just a little bit more back.
A little bit more back.
But this through here is how wide?
So this line here is the 40-foot setback, so.
From the street.
From this.
So from the street to here is 40 feet.
Right, so you're, 35 to.
From the back of the sidewalk. Right, so
Yeah.
so this isn't all sloped towards Shaw Ave?
No, it's either flat or sloping back into the property.
Irene Collins, 104 Shore
Go
Ave.
ahead.
The way it is now, there's a slight incline at the foot of Shore Ave going out onto 18. I live right next to the brook. So the water, I get it on both angles. Not only that, but my view of that is from my dining room window. So I'll have to be looking at that all the time. And when the lights are on at night and what have you, that's directed right at me because I only live diagonally across from Leanne. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be looking at it
more than she is.
I don't know if she agree with you, but we had, one of the things we have to file with the planning board is a photometric plan that shows where lights are, and that part of the zoning bylaws and the design requirements are, we cannot create light trespass. We can't put a light up on the top of the roof and shine into the neighbor's yard. It's illegal. It's not allowed. They can stop us, the building inspector can stop us. All of our lights are all downlighting. They have shields now. So back in the day, like Memorial Field, you had a spotlight, it just kind of shined outward. Now they have shields where if you have a light, you can see them on, well, I won't get on details, but it's all downlighting with shields. So you're not going to have lights shining down Shar Avenue. If a light's on in our parking lot overnight, will you notice that there's a light on? Sure you will. But will it be shining in Susan Castle's
My
garage?
dining room window?
Yeah.
Well, that was actually going to be my next question, because last time we talked about the lights being 17 and a half feet off the ground, which was almost 23, 24 feet higher than the ground at Leanne's house, and nothing was done about it. We talked about making smaller, actually nothing was changed in the lighting. They're all way up off the ground. The lights over the front doors are 15 feet off the ground. They may not be dark sky related, but just like these lights, this ceiling is about as high as those light fixtures are going to be around the property. This is about 18 feet. And you're going to see the light fixture regardless. Maybe, I don't know, maybe, I look at the photometric thing, and I know it's just a computer generated thing, so I don't know if it was actually ever checked, but because it's just drawn automatically, it's a program. But you're going to see the filaments. You're going to see the filaments of these lighting. I don't know why nothing, I thought last thing we talked about was to do something with that, to bring it down to maybe even the fence level.
We proposed to put one light in the back of the building itself.
There's 4 lights, well, there's 3 lights against the fence.
Yeah, on the building. It's
Yeah.
one light. That's right over the garage door, and that's a down light.
That's 15 feet off the ground, which is 20 feet off the ground compared to hers, but yeah.
And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, there's perimeter lights that are about every, 30 feet or 40 feet or so.
Yep, all the way around the property. Yeah. But they're 17 and a half feet off the ground.
Yep.
Why are they not like 8 feet off the ground?
Well, because of the spread. I mean, for insurance liability, you do have to have.
No, don't pull the insurance liability stuff. Everybody throws that crap out. No, I'm talking about when you look at fixtures. No, everyone says that. We had a person said they didn't put their fence out there because someone might fall on their property, and so that's why we told the planning board, put a fence here and we put it on the edge of the street. And that liability it's a bogus thing. That's why I asked. I was worried last time. I go, is this if you're worried about the building being someone drilling through the side of the wall or something to get into the building? I can imagine. But why do these lights have to be so far off the ground?
I will say too, we are maintaining, or we are preserving all these circles here are trees that are not going to be going anywhere. They're the big tall ones that are out there today. So those will provide some buffers, and these larger ones here, they may only be 10 or 12 feet now. Same thing with the ones on here. They will ultimately grow to be your big large trees that will.
Yeah, but we're still talking about a fixture twice as big as it really needs to be. Why is it so far off the ground?
Connor Nagle with BHP. We looked at reducing the height of the fixtures. The lighting levels here are very low for a commercial building. Security is about having a consistent lighting, not so much a bright lighting. You don't want dark spots, that's what creates the insecurity. If we reduce the height to get that level across, we will have far more fixtures, and they will still be higher than the fence, and they will now be lower than the mature trees. So where we have them now, we feel is the optimum height to get them into the leaves of the trees and have less fixtures so that they actually won't be a nuisance. And again, they are all screened so that they face downward and, as the photometric show, don't spill over the property line.
Well, I know they face down, but if you can see the light fixture, that's by itself is an annoyance, just to see the LED, coming through your window or driving along Shar Avenue. There's lights all the way around this they're all, they're not as tall as Lowe's, but those are big lampposts.
But
And
I don't know if I know you know this. They literally have screens, shields in the lights. If you go to the new school and go to the turf fields at night when the lights are on,
Yeah.
you'll see lights with shields. And you'll see that if you step 10 feet off the field, it's darkness. I mean, that's the new lighting systems now. They have, if you're on Memorial Field, behind the Ferolio, they don't have shields. So you'll see the general spotlight effect. But the shields they have on commercial lighting now are put there for this exact reason, to create a dark line and a secure line.
I'll also add that, I don't know Memorial Field, but presuming it's a ball field, the foot candles on that are probably in the order of 30 to 40 foot candles. We're talking 1 to 2 foot candles here. This is a very low, consistent lighting for security.
I'd like to be able to see an example of it, but even people's lights on their front porches are annoying because you can see the bulb. Regardless of how little light is put out, it's still a bright bulb that you can't hide unless you put your shades down. What I don't want to see happen is I see it happen too many times with houses that are adjoining commercial property, and they all have to have dark nighttime shades all the way down. No one looks out their houses anymore because of all the light coming in from the window. Not necessarily the light beaming down, but the light you can actually see from the bulb itself. I understand, I can read the photometrics, but I can also tell that I can see, like, these lights are very much tucked in, but these LEDs come down closer to the grill, closer to the lens. And you know, my concern is that if that fixture is something that you're just constantly your eyes constantly being drawn to it from your house, I don't think driving by is going to be an issue, but that's the concern. I just without seeing an example of how that would at that height would be screened.
And raise up the foot candles so we can still get the security spread?
You can, I mean, then it's going to be brighter. I would suggest that this is the optimum, but, you know, we can certainly come up
It'd be
with
brighter,
scenarios.
only be brighter on our property, not on the other side.
Well, would that, would you?
Six of one, half dozen other, we provide, you know,
Right.
accommodate one way
It's
or
gotta
another.
be more of a glowing light if you lower them and increase the foot candles.
Correct.
That would be my argument.
That's the problem. Yeah.
That's one. Yeah,
For sure.
yeah. Well, like Jeff, unless I can see it, I understand what you're saying.
And with the lights going over the front doors, they're going to be on sensors, or is that going to be on all the time? The 15-foot, the lights over the center doors.
The garage.
We haven't really discussed it, but they can be for sure. They certainly can be. Or a timer clock. I mean, they can't turn off at dusk. Obviously, people,
Yeah.
come in after
I'm just concerned because it's lit up 24 hours. Just trying to mitigate, I mean, it is commercial property, you gotta do what you gotta do with commercial property, but,
Would you be open to allowing us to revisit if there's an issue 6 months down the road and you get it built and there's
Certainly.
a problem? Can we agree that we'll come back and?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we think it's gonna be dark on the one side.
I'm hoping, you know, I think like I said, the building's got a very, it's just sitting there, it's very solitude, it's not gonna be doing a lot, so if the lighting was just as downplayed. All right,
We feel very confident about it, and we don't want to disturb any neighbors, and we'd be more than glad to revisit it.
okay.
I think we wound up doing that with Lowe's a long time ago, and we never had to go back. But
All right, well, all right, there's a lighting part. The other one is that I see that, so the utilities are gonna go across Shar Avenue, you're gonna attach to those lines over there. As I mentioned, there's no way in the world that it'll ever get patched where it won't just fall apart, so we'll have beautiful Shar Avenue, then we'll have a speed bump when we get to Route 18. But what I'd like to see is a detail on the drawing, because there isn't any general notes on it, of how that patch is to be repaired. Explain, you know, specifically, guys, pointing out that's to be cut, you know, the asphalt's supposed to be cut, when it's patched in, that besides being well compacted, that it's heated to go into the ground, you know, with the flames. So if you could be more specific on guiding the contractor so we can get a much better finished job on that patch on Shar Avenue.
Yeah, no, most definitely. We would work with DPW to figure out what their, you know, standard cross-section is and place that in kind wherever we work.
Well, a little step beyond DPW, because we've got, you know, that's not a good example.
And just, you know, so people understand too, sometimes the DPW, depending on what time of year the trench is built, is put in, sometimes they'll ask for a temporary pavement, let it go through a winter freeze and thaw to see if anything settles, and then come back and pave it again for the final time. So you may, just so the neighbors know, you may see temporary pavement, until it goes through winter, and then they come back and finish.
Do you have separate specifications, or is it everything on the plan?
We would come up with construction specifications.
Okay,
Are not
so
shown on
that,
here.
okay.
A lot of times they use flowable fill too, that doesn't settle. It's more like closer to a concrete than it
Okay.
is.
All right. Ms. Vaillant.
I have one more question too. It's about the visibility. We're talking about rain and everything. When they plow with snow, they put mounds at the end of the street. Now, when we're coming out of Shore Ave now, we kind of go around to make sure that the cars aren't coming, because the traffic on 18 is horrendous. I've seen senior citizens in wheelchairs run across the street with cars don't stop. When they have mounds of snow, what's the visibility going to be?
Getting back to Mr. Jerk, who reviewed this, we had our traffic engineer design and review, and then the town's engineer reviewed it. And getting back to what he was saying, that there would be nothing allowed to be stored or put in that area where, so if you're pulling out of Shore Avenue, nothing can be put on basically our corner, our street corner. Even our sign for the building is set back, so that the sign's kind of behind you, as, you know, when you're up with your car. And honestly, this kind of slopes down our land. You could walk off the sidewalk to Bedford Street, and you kind of go down to our paved area over here. We have plenty of places to store snow elsewhere. Frankly, this is where the office area is, so we're not gonna want piles of snow in that area. We can't tell you how much we've had emails and phone conversations and such about the Shore Avenue intersection.
It's not.
Yep, oh yeah, and I'm sorry we can't improve it, but we're trying to do anything to not make it worse.
And they don't pay any attention to the blinking light at all. Nothing.
And the specific note that we are asking them to put up there, it says snow as well. So it's not only, it's no objects, so if there's any snow piles and your visibility, it has to be completely removed. So that is a note that will go on the plan. So that's also why you want that site plan shown, because that defines that area, and the note says you can't put snow in there, it has to be removed.
Clarify, if the town, there's a sidewalk that puts a pile out there, the town did it, it's not us. We will not add anything, put anything over that.
That finger has been pointed at you many times.
Yes, Mr. Collins.
This is how I wrote it in the minutes, that opponent's not going to allow snow to mount up on their property. There's plenty of area to store the snow. That's how I'm writing this in the minutes.
Yeah.
My question's for the traffic engineer as well. The standard commercial width of that entrance, because it's a single entrance, which has me concerned, is 30 feet. How wide could we go? Because this is not about passing one vehicle through. This is about, in the event we had an incident here, a alleged incident, passing multiple vehicles through there. Because if there was a fire there, that single entrance is going to rapidly become congested with fire hose being laid to it, regardless if there's any yard hydrants in there. Because the reality is, it's going to be one of our mutual aid engines, probably is going to be feeding a line into us, and they're just going to grab something on 18. So my concern is I want to make sure that single entrance is as wide as we actually could be, so that we can have multiple fire apparatus going through there.
Well, I know that's the letter that you want to send to.
Yeah, exactly. I think that Mass DOT is going to be hesitant to go wider than 30 feet for this use because it's a very low traffic generator. But to your point, if you include that in the letter that goes in, I think what they look at is rather than widening the actual pavement area, they would probably deal with potentially some of the landscaping areas, doing something where, you know, whether that's scored concrete or something that's usable to you and something they can plow. But the concern, of course, is the wider the driveway gets, you know, absent your need to get into the site, it just is, it doesn't provide a lot of definition for people to stay on the right side of the road as they're exiting, but also from the standpoint of a pedestrian or bicyclist, it's a wider open space that they have to, so that they're hesitant from that perspective, but that doesn't mean from a design feature perspective, they can't accommodate you by doing something else, and they can plow it, maintain it, and you could drive over it, but from a motorist perspective, they still stay within that area. So I think that should be in your comment letter, definitely.
If we perhaps try to go up to 35 feet, I'd rather, this is a one-time shot to get the single entrance. I had no problem closing up Shore Avenue. I think that was wise, but now that limits us down to the single entrance. If we went for 35, I just hate to see us, even if it was 30, if we find out that's too narrow, like we keep consistently seeing, everything looks good on paper until we actually go to do it, and we wish we made this larger too. So if we're gonna do it, maybe we can try to go for 35.
We'll certainly ask, you know, what's the worst thing they can say is no, right?
Yeah, they put a lot of weight in your comment letter, so if you put that in your comment letter saying for life safety reasons, this is what we, we really want, the maximum dimension that you'll allow, something like that.
Yeah,
You can coordinate with Sean.
If we have no more questions, could Mr. Johnson just go through what the conditions are that he's recommending?
Sure.
Sure.
I have a question.
One more question, Mr. Chairman, there's one more question, I'm sorry.
Well, let him go through it, and then we'll have the question.
The first one was having sheet 2 of 9, the layout materials plan endorsed by a professional land surveyor responsible for confirming the setbacks to the proposed building. The second one was appropriate bonding will be required to ensure that the proposed vegetation in the gravel wetland survives for 2 growing seasons. This also might be a condition and may be more appropriate as part of the order of conditions by the Conservation Commission. The disconnection of the existing utilities and the restoration of the pavement surface within Shaw Avenue must be coordinated with and acceptable to the DPW. New configuration of the entrance driveway in Bedford Street must be confirmed by the traffic consultant, Vanass and Associates. Alternative means to ensure permanent stabilization, such as plantings, is required prior to construction to allow the use of the proposed 2-to-1 slope along Bedford Street and Shaw Avenue, and the 2.5-to-1 slope in the stormwater basin. Number 6 was discussed, and that would be removed, and that was looking at narrowing up the driveway in the back of the building and increasing the area for parallel pavement. So if the board's decision is not to go with that, that would be removed as a condition. And then the applicant must provide certification that the design of the subsurface gravel wetland is consistent with the specifications established by UNH Stormwater Center, which is the design that they've chosen to use, and that at the time it's constructed that they certify that the as-built plan was built in accordance with the design. And then there are standard conditions that the board has in their
Yes, sir.
I have, well, 2 questions.
Could we have your name and address, please?
I'm Thomas House, 732 Bedford Street. One of the fire chief saying mutual aid. There's a fire hydrant right at that entranceway, so that, don't know if that's gonna throw a ball in the plans of the entranceway, if they're gonna use mutual aid. He's saying put a pumper truck there or something. I know it's right on my property line, that's how I know that. And 2, more for the engineering. You were saying you want conifer trees. I was looking at the plans, and it says Colorado spruces. I don't know if you know it, but there's a nasty disease going through the spruces now that's killing them all. So they're putting them on out there. It's called needle cast, and there's no known control. So you might want to look into changing that, because they're dead in 5 to 10 years, the trees. I mean, I'm a licensed pesticide applicator, so I know that.
Yeah, we can, talk to the landscape architect and see if there's other.
Yeah, I'm just suggesting, if you want to put them out there and have them all dead, and then what do you have left? Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I think more of a comment, was just, they were talking about the light.
Yeah, we don't need to use that anymore.
No, I'm just, if you get something that has a hang down behind it, so the light would fall this way rather than fall towards the property line, that may be a way to settle that from falling over, just something that hangs below.
That's the shield that I'm talking about.
That's the shield.
Yeah, hanging much lower, than it would ever show off your property.
100% agree.
You know?
Yep. We're required to use them to prevent that.
Any other questions from the board? Then we will make a motion to close the hearing. Motion made.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. On the motion for a special permit to allow a reduced number of required parking spaces pursuant to Abington zoning bylaw, chapter 175-53, reduced by 10 places to 17 on that motion.
I would just add one condition if possible, that basically, for some strange reason, if it's September 1st and everyone's moving in and out of everything, that it's made clear that there's no parking along Shaw Avenue nor Bedford Street, that there's 17 spaces, that's what we've agreed to. If it's full for some strange reason, go drive around the block until something opens up in 20 minutes. If just that language can be included somewhere, that.
Prohibit parking on Shaw and Bedford Street.
Yeah.
It's illegal to park on Route 18.
Right, but just, again, I don't think it would ever happen, but just to cover ourselves in case it's a busy September 1st.
I'll make that motion with Rick's
Addition.
amendment.
On the amended motion, all those, any further discussion? On the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. On the site plan review, to approve that with all the requirements of the letter of January 28, 2020 from Norwood Engineering, and also that DOT, if DOT will approve an additional 5 feet, in either case, either with asphalt or with the other material, that would make it easier for the fire apparatus to get in.
They show 24 now. He says
It's
like
30. It's 30 now, and this will go to 35 if DOT approves it. If they don't approve it, there's nothing much you can do about it. I mean,
Yep.
We'll apply
It's a
for up to
minimum.
35.
they'll apply for it.
It's a minimum of 30, though.
Right.
Well,
Could I, excuse me? Hi, I'm sorry. Pat Dunford, traffic engineer for the applicant.
Yeah.
I actually spoke with the District 5 office regarding the dimension of the driveways, and sometimes their standards can be a little bit fluid, but they were very clear to me that they were looking for 30-foot corner radii, 24-foot maximum width. That we can guarantee. They also said reason and documentation from the fire department certainly is very compelling, so they're happy to consider 30 feet. We're also happy to consider 35 or whatever they'll allow, but the minimum, or I guess we can guarantee 24, I can't guarantee 30. I can guarantee we're going to ask for at least that, we just can't guarantee they'll issue it. So it's 30 according, or 24 according to District 5. Thank you.
so we would apply with the fire chief up to 35 to see what they'll give us. We're showing 24, that's what they're
Yeah,
approving now.
just wanna make sure
So
that's
we'll
the-
commit to apply for
all we
more.
can-
Is there something we can do to say we endorse the idea as a planning board of the town of Abington?
Perhaps we get a letter from you guys to go with the application.
No problem.
They said the fire department correspondence would be compelling in that regard. That's really all they needed. Okay. Thank you.
So I would move that we accept with the conditions laid out from the engineer, minus the one regarding the narrowing of the driveway around the back of the building. Did we decide that we were okay skipping that one?
About the parking
Which item
back,
is that?
narrowing it?
Yeah.
No, I thought that was narrow, though. Actually, I thought we kind of bounced back and forth that the dimensions they gave was
No, Unit
good.
6, item 6, and Dave's thing was not to be included, I believe, right? And I would suggest number 2 be not included either. That was Dave's suggestion about a performance bond. I'm assuming you guys will use the traditional $25,000 performance bond here. And then as Dave said, we're going to conservation. Whether they do a bond or not, I'm not sure, but they will do an inspection, obviously.
I guess the comment is that it be bonded separately from the remainder of the site. that's specific to that
For the,
stormwater system.
just the stormwater, okay.
That would be in addition to any other bonding that the planning board would require for the site plan.
Okay, so you prefer the planning board carry that bond? Right,
If,
doesn't matter to us.
if the Conservation Commission doesn't require it, I'm suggesting that the planning board require it. One of the two boards should require at least a 2-year window to ensure that vegetation is established.
I think it's easier for you guys to do it then, because I'm not sure how quickly they are.
What's the figure? What's the figure?
Oh, the amount?
Yeah.
They have a standard $25,000 performance bond for all projects. You know, to make sure landscaping's done and all that.
But this is above and beyond.
We should do an additional,
Put a price on it, right?
I don't know what it is, 15,000, 25,000, what is the number?
I really can't say.
Something that hurts and makes us respond to you, you know?
I would think if you went with 15,000 for the plantings.
I've got to assume you guys are going to continue.
25,000.
You're going to build this and sell it.
And
The plan is to.
So that would be a $40,000 bond.
well, I would suggest it be two separate ones, because the performance one to build, the building could be done, let's just say in a year, and then you can release that bond. And then you can hold the second bond for 15,000 after 2 years to make sure everything's growing in the stormwater area.
It could also be reduced.
Right.
I mean, you could do one bond and reduce it, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, the only reason is one's
Yeah,
going out for
that's
2
usually-
years and the other one isn't, Bob, that's what they're talking about.
What's that?
My client is saying.
One's going for, could be done immediately, and the other one has to go out 2 years, that's the problem.
But we could reduce, paperwork-wise, it could be one bond.
Yeah, it could be one
Reduce
bond.
the amount.
We're fine with it, they're telling me
Yes.
to do that. Do the 40, we'll come in for reduction when the project is.
Okay. So not including item 6, we're gonna leave item 2 in with the $40,000 bond. Okay,
Yes.
okay. Leave that, so I'm gonna leave that in.
And I would add
The
one,
the other thing is that if they were to come in to reduce the bond for the site plan, if there was a need to tap some of that to supplement the stormwater system, you could do it at that
Right,
time.
exactly.
So that's a fail-safe as well.
one other, and I don't know if this needs to be a condition, but just that if there turns out to be a lighting issue, that we revisit it down the road.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll put that in, but I'll put that in the motion. if you
Okay.
want.
And two others I would think, suggested based on the feedback. One was that we would have that sightline triangle, make sure that that's on the plan, which is fine. And the other one was the one I wrote down about the solid fence would be reviewed and approved by Mr. and Mrs. Adams.
Right.
One thing they might want to consider, again, because what's on the plan is sometimes not all that clear, is when they do the plantings, have them stake out on the ground the site triangle. So to ensure.
Oh, yeah.
You know, just with being.
Make sure a street tree could be 10 feet away instead of 8 feet, which could
Right,
work.
just stake it out with beam poles, so it's visible.
So that would be including the traffic engineer's comments. All of that, right?
Anything further? Any further discussion
So the motion's been.
on the motion?
Let me read the motion back, just so we're all clear.
Yeah.
'Cause Liz is not doing this than I am, so I just want to make sure you guys are clear with this. Thank you. Should read my handwriting, I gotta type this up. Okay, so the motion's been made by Rick to approve the site plan review with the following conditions. The letter of Norwood Engineering, I keep wanting to say PMP, David. Norwood Engineering excluding item 6. We're gonna revisit the lighting issue in 6 months if there's an issue. We're gonna put in the sight line triangle, as Jeff Dirk mentioned, and we're gonna review the fence plan with Mr. and Mrs. Adams on this. So those are the conditions that we have on this.
And that we will apply to Mass DOT.
Oh, yeah, and we'll apply to Mass DOT for an up to 35-foot opening.
Bond amount.
And the bond amount would be $40,000.
Bond amount, 40K, Mass DOT. for a 35-foot opening. Okay. So again, with the conditions, David's letter, leave out item 6, bond amount is $40,000, revisit lighting issue after 6 months, sightline triangle, fence plan reviewed by the Adams and applied to MassDOT for 35-foot openings. That's the motion. Somebody, want a second?
Motion been seconded by some, who seconded it?
Second.
All right, Bob Soper.
Anything further? No further discussion? On the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you for your time. Thank you, David, for your input. Thank you guys for helping out.
Look, guys.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you for your.
The Abington Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Monday, February 3rd at 6:20 PM on the application of the Green Harbor Dispensary LLC, 29 Abbey Lane, Middleborough, Mass. 02346 for site plan approval pursuant to Abington zoning bylaw 17577 and a special permit application pursuant to zoning bylaw 175-24.3 for the proposed marijuana retail store location in the marijuana overlay district. The property is owned by Mohammed Kane, 1410 Bedford Street, Abington, Mass. 02351. The property is located at 1410 Bedford Street on Assessors Map 46, Lot 60. Plans can be viewed at the Town Clerk's Office, Wayne P. Smith, Chairman, January 20th and 27th. One of the things, for everyone's information here, is one of the things that gets quite confusing on planning board business is many times we have hearings and it would be nice to say this hearing won't come on till 8:20, but because of problems, if the first person on the agenda decides not to show up and we leave an hour, we all sit here for an hour and can't discuss anything. So I know it's exasperating sometimes for the people that are in attendance that figure the hearing is going to start at 20 minutes past 6, and here it is 20 minutes past 8, and I apologize for that, but that's the only way we've been able to set these meetings up. On that, who is going to speak?
Mikhail McLeod, I'm from Sullivan and Comerford, and I represent Green Harbor Dispensary, the applicant. So I am here this evening with Nick Patel, who is Chief Operating Officer. I am here with Paul Maravito, who is Project Engineer, and Pedro Almeida, who is Project Architect. So the site's located at 1410 Bedford Street. It is in the business development zone as well as the marijuana overlay district. They're seeking to construct a little over 1,700 square foot marijuana establishment for adult use only. There'll be 6 point of sale terminals. And a little bit of the back history of this project is back in August, we negotiated and entered into a host community agreement with the town of Abington with the selectmen. Back in October, we held a host community meeting, opened it up to talk to abutters and any interested party a little bit about the project before we came before this board. And now we're here. I am going to turn it over to Paul Maravito to take us through the site, and then I'm going to have Pedro Almeida go through the floor plans and architectural side of things. I do understand and I do apologize that the traffic study was received the end of last week or maybe just today. And so I understand that we're tabling that conversation for another hearing, and I respect that. So we'll go through the site and then architectural and then answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Paul Maravito from Ross Engineering Company. We prepared the site plan, which has been submitted to your board for the site that will be used to advertise the proposed use. The site is an existing parcel of land of 14,948 square feet with its frontage on Bedford Street. It's also bordered by a public street called H.J. Elm, which is a layout of 50 feet. The existing structure on the site is comprised of the area in brown, as well as this striped area here. There's an existing in-ground pool and a cabana in this location. There's a camper parked here as well. The existing pavement on the site is limited to 5 existing parking spaces, which are off of Route 18 at the present time. In the proposed condition, this half of the building will remain in use, and the area in brown is going to be remodeled to accommodate the proposed business. Our site plan shows access to the site would be a one-way turn from Bedford Street onto H.J. Elm Street, and then there'd be a one-way directional flow via a 12-foot wide access drive, which would come out and exit back out onto Route 18. There are 5 existing spaces in this area here. These would be eliminated once the work on Route 18 is completed. I've been told that this perhaps may be a granite curb, which would preclude the ability for the people to park in this area here. Under the proposed conditions, there's a total of 22 spaces that are proposed, that are being proposed. There's only 12 spaces required. This plan here with the layout shows 18 spaces up to this point here. So we exceed the required by 6 spaces. The existing structure is fairly low to the ground. What we're proposing for stormwater is to pave the parking area and the access drive with what we call a pervious pavement. What that does is to accept all the water that goes into it. It'll be treated and recharged back into the ground. There's a detail that we placed on the plan accordingly. And that pavement would be from the back edge of the parking here to here and all the way out to Bedford Street. Based upon the impervious coverage on the site, the present time is 51.2%. With the introduction of the pervious pavement, that will be reduced down to 36.1%, about 15% less than what's on the site. This existing street is very flat. It's about 0.3%. There is some existing pavement in it. There's also a gravel area. It does have sewer on it. The proposed building will be serviced by existing water and sewer. The grading on the site is relatively flat. We'll come in from H.J. Elm. We're proposing a proposed grade of 99.3. That'll slow it down to 98.3 here. It's about a 1-foot drop. Then there's a high point here. From here, the water comes back, and there's some water going back out to Route 18, but it'll be less than what's going out there at the present time. I think with that, I'll end my presentation and answer any questions you may have. One thing I'll point out, Dave Johnson did submit some review comments, and we have not had an opportunity to address those at this point. So, for that, I'll end and answer the questions you may have.
Thank you, Dave.
I'll try to knock this down to 2 main comments. The first one is item number 2 under zoning. The marijuana bylaw is fairly clear, and it indicates that a site needed to comply with all of the dimensional requirements of the underlying district. This is a non-conforming lot. does not comply with a number of the dimensional requirements of the underlying district, particularly the lot size and the yard setbacks. We're suggesting that the zoning enforcement officer be contacted and render an opinion as to whether or not the proposed site does in fact meet the requirements of the marijuana overlay district bylaw. That would be the first item that's really of significance when moving forward with the site plan. The second comment is really the parking and circulation. The site does not lend itself to the circulation pattern that they're proposing. The parking spaces, although on their face meet the 10 by 18 parking requirement of the bylaw, zone bylaw, that's typically for a perpendicular parking space. When you get into angle parking, the length of those parking spaces has to be increased to accommodate a car that would fit in a 10 by 18 space. So what typically happens is the rear ends of the car project out further into the aisle. They're proposing a 12-foot wide aisle, which now would be reduced in width because of the angle of the parking spaces. And the pedestrian circulation, again, plays into that. The entrance to this building is on the front side of the building. All the parking is in the rear. They've provided no means of getting really around the building. They've left that gravel area on the plan shown as gravel, and without any type of walk or landscaping to facilitate pedestrian circulation. When you come out of the building, you're exiting the building onto this gravel surface, and again, needing to walk through the parking aisle in order to get to the vehicle. As Paul indicated, the 5 parking spaces in the front are most likely going to be eliminated by the reconstruction and widening of Route 18. The extensive open curb cut is going to be closed off by the state, I believe, from the reconstruction plans. So those parking spaces will be eliminated, and access to the site, because of the one-way circulation, will be off the side street. So those are the real nuts and bolts issues that are driving the approval of the site plan, and that is the zoning department's determination and looking at the layout of the parking. There's no landscaping proposed. I think my suggestion was if you were to reclaim that gravel area and landscape it with a sidewalk with some pedestrian access to the front of the building, that would go a long way to improving at least the pedestrian circulation around the site. There are a number of parking issues that really need to be resolved from that point of view. That's really to get into it. Those are the things we should probably focus on in terms of site plan review. And as a sidelight, I believe it's Yelm. As a Scandinavian, I think it's Yelm. Yelm.
As a kid, I always called it Helgem Street or something.
From Yelm? Yelm Street? It's Yelm, right?
Hell.
I put an H in it when I say it, I don't know.
I grew up in Abington, that's why I always called it Hell.
I didn't name it.
David's the Swedes from East Bridgewater, let's see that.
Okay, so, that concludes my comments, and let the board and the neighbors make their presence known.
Any comments? Yes, sir.
I totally disagree with that plan.
Could you give us your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry. Michael Noonan, 63 Mulberry Drive. I own the property right behind us. And years ago, I was going to do a project. I'd like to present this to the board to show that his street is completely wrong. That piece of the house is in the middle of Helm Street. It did have a building permit, but the street is 50 foot wide. What he has shown as the street is actually owned by Whitman Body Works, that paved area. Would you like me to show you this? This was done by Carl Garvey.
Was this the health, the gym you were gonna do?
Yes, yes. Here is the building. Here's the 50-foot, here's the 50-foot street. Here's the sewer going down it. In reality, and this is a private way, not a public way. I don't know whether that makes a difference at all.
It would be owned by the people on either side.
That's correct. So, in reality, he's taken up part of the street as it is with this building beyond there. This is actually, you can look in the town maps too, and you can see on the town maps that this building now exists inside this 50-foot footprint. So what he's showing at the street belongs to RPT 1998 Realty Trust. That's what's actually paved. There's also, with them trying to use all that area to come in, there's a construction company, a trucking company, a body works, and a well, there's a car lot here, which is where the existing pavement is, and there's also Danny Nagel's place right there. So those plans are wrong. I just, it can't be done, and to have that amount of traffic coming in through here with what is already existing, I believe is going to be impeding other businesses. And those plans are no good. Sorry.
We called the town clerk and they indicated that was a public way, that's where we show it.
Well, it probably is
On
a
the
public,
street?
well, it's a, yeah, well, there's obviously more than one ownership on the land.
That's
so,
correct.
However, and I'm sure the town clerk told you it was a public way, but probably wouldn't have any knowledge of what, if that building is in the right of way or not.
No, we acknowledge it's in there. I mean, that's on some previous plans. We actually surveyed the property and, you know, we showed this,
This is the street right here.
you know, we showed the bump out
Paul,
of the street.
I think the issue is, I think this gentleman, I think you're thinking that this line here is the lot line. We're not saying that this
But
is the lot.
you're showing your flow of traffic in somebody else's property. Yes, the flow of traffic, the way you have that set up, that belongs to RPT 1998 Realty Trust. That's a private piece of property.
So is Helm Street actually Paper Street?
It's actually a paper street. Matter of fact, it's had a couple of different names if you look in the history of it. Whoever named it Helm Street didn't do us any favors. The way it's spelled.
Yeah, it actually, that same street is on Harris Court.
Yes.
You know, so.
But it can't go through
but it
because of
can't go
wetlands.
through because of the wetlands, right?
That might be the public way.
What?
That might be what the town clerk is saying is a public way.
The other end of it would be a public way. This is a private way. On our deeds, we have rights to it, the three owners.
Yeah, they all own to the center of the road,
That's
wherever
correct.
that is.
But, again, he's showing plans where the traffic flow is going on somebody's private property.
Well, I would suggest you go to the registry of deeds and find out exactly where your property is on that.
Well, this, you can go right to Carl Garvey. He did these for me years ago. That's, and this is the sewer going down the middle of the street. Okay, and there's a gas line going down the middle of the street.
I think they're inside, I think they're inside the 50-foot layout. With the access, they're coming down as 50 foot,
No,
within that
that's-
50-foot layout.
The 50-foot access is right here. There's the 50-foot access right here. He has it on, he has a street on, that's not Helm Street. See how he has that Helm
Yeah.
Street? This belongs to right here. PT 1998 Realty Trust.
Yeah, this plan shows, you know, it shows the name of the abutter.
See?
This is the layout here.
Helm Street
That's
is
the
right
abutter.
here. This is Helm Street. I've owned it since 1996.
I don't know, it's looking to be the same to me.
No, he's-
Here's the bump out, here's
Yeah,
the bump
he-
out.
Here's the layout, here's the layout.
See how he has his street coming in here?
Yeah.
That's his access right here, that's what he was just explaining.
This piece.
Yes.
Yes.
But he's showing this as Helm Street right here, and the access that he wants to have the flow of traffic is coming down a private piece of property.
This part.
Yes, that's not Helm Street.
Oh.
Well, Elm Street's got a layout of 50 feet, he shows it here as
Yes,
well.
right here.
Right here.
Well, this is a gas line here.
This is a 10-scale plan. Yeah.
So it's,
Okay, this
it's
plan
a lot-
shows Elm Street, private, 50 feet wide. 50 feet goes from here to here.
That's correct.
This,
And that's what
from
he's
here to
showing.
here is a 50 feet, right.
that's what he's showing here.
Yeah.
50 feet from here to here.
So he wants a flow of traffic, where there's gonna be other traffic coming this way, to have all that traffic coming in behind the building, right through here. Which is 119 feet from Bedford Street.
Right.
And also, they're gonna be putting in berms or curbing when the road is done. And there's gonna be no parking on Bedford Street, as you well know.
You know, if they're putting vertical curb across that whole site, and he doesn't have any access to his property, if we follow his argument of this being a private way with no
Mhm.
access there. So, I mean, if that's the case, I'm not saying it is, but following that thinking, then this site has no access to Route
Well,
18.
as a private way, he would have rights over his private way as an abutter.
He should.
That's, yes, that is correct. He is deeded on the home street.
So
But, I mean, this house has been here for 50 years, so it has to have access somehow. So, I mean, if MassDOT's closing off the entire frontage, then that's MassDOT's problem.
So he's showing 50 feet, he's showing the layout of,
Elm Street.
Elm Street. It goes right through the building.
Yes, goes
Okay.
right through the building.
And then he goes over 50 feet.
Okay, all right, so it is the same as this then?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
but it's still, with the congestion that's down there right now, and I don't know what a marijuana facility is gonna have for flow of traffic, there's not much room for us there now to get trucks in and out. And also, you know,
I was wondering
I
how.
question the wetland too, how close he is to the wetlands there, but that's for another day.
Well, that was one of our comments, that they're going to need to file with the Conservation Commission, because there's a flagged wetland line.
Oh, yeah.
There's a flagged wetland line to be observed along the southerly side here, comes right up pretty much to the property line.
All right.
Where's your property? Here,
Right
from
here,
here over?
Starts, I have all this back here.
Okay, and I saw,
That's
there's
a
a
little
small
house,
house there.
yeah, I own that house,
Yeah.
all the property back.
Well, you know, were these improvements ever made?
No, by the time I get done with going through everything, the financing dissipated. So now it's just used as a parking area. But anyways, that was my concern. And,
All right.
I guess I was wrong, but the house is still in the street. So I don't know whether there's enough room for traffic to flow along with what the traffic is that's there.
I haven't got my letter here, but someone got from the building inspector of the house that said there was a problem with the land.
Oh, there was
There was a legitimate building thing issued on that, even though it was in the middle of the street, line was issued. I have looked at it in the past.
I think, I know I read it, I think it was either on the email or something, where, in fact, I know I did.
Who owns the property?
He was here, he unfortunately had to leave this evening.
And there's also another business in there, and I don't, is his residence in there still?
Correct, so as the building is currently, it's vacant on the side, the Green Harbor dispensary is looking to,
On the side?
so there's two sides to, and we have some architecturals here that if we went through that, maybe that would be a little bit easier to understand. So one side of the building is being proposed, maybe Pedro can pull up his plans and sort of go through it. So the right-hand side of the building is where the Green Harbor Dispensary is proposed use. Currently, on the left-hand side of the building, there's a sign shop, and above, there's an accessory apartment. I think maybe this would be a good segue into Pedro Meda going through the architectural plans and floor plans, unless
Sure.
the board has some other question prior to that.
I have lots of questions, so I'll take a look at it.
I guess there's gonna be more than one tenant on this property when all said and done.
Correct.
Does our bylaw say anything about
So the-
whether it has to be a single occupancy building?
So, it would have to comply with the state regulations. I know you've got to have security between businesses, and that would have to be handled in some respect.
And to answer your question regarding more than one use or that, in regards to if it's a medical marijuana facility, you can't have a dwelling unit in that house, and I believe it does have to be its own principal use. The bylaws have in regards to adult use.
Can't hear
Pardon?
it. Can't hear you.
Oh, so what I was just saying is he asked a question in regards to more than one use in a building when there's a marijuana establishment. And I see the fact that the bylaw says for medical marijuana, you can't have a dwelling unit in that building, which we're not medical marijuana. And I believe, and I could be misspeaking in that it has to be its own principal structure, whereas this is an adult use recreational marijuana establishment, and the bylaw does not require that it be more than 500 feet away from a residential unit or anything to that effect.
Excuse me. No, you just said that your residents are in there, plus a business already, and now you're gonna be adding a business?
Correct, and in the prior uses, there was another business there.
I guess that's my question was, is the parking calculations include the other businesses that you would just present? Or was that just for the marijuana facility?
No, that's the impervious area is based upon the existing structure.
No, but does the parking include for the existing tenant?
There's gonna be more than one tenant there, does it include the whole building, the parking?
Yes.
Or is it just for the marijuana facility?
The plan we had, the required spaces for all the uses was 12, and we're proposing 22. And then 4
And based on Dave's comments, it may even get less. When you get a chance to review it. I know you didn't have a chance to review it. Okay.
Yeah, they have it on the plan, it's based upon 300 square feet.
That's for the sign company.
300 square feet per gross.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they have the gross square footage of the building, and they divided that by 300 square feet per parking space, which gave them
Which is maybe fine for the sign company, but the retail is much smaller, doesn't use 300.
I think that 300 is the zoning bylaw requirement.
Oh, the zoning bylaw. Okay, I was thinking of, because when you figure out the occupancy, divide, use the means of egress.
No, it's the zoning bylaw,
Yeah.
you might remember that, Bob, from your days as building inspector. Look, it's 300 square feet.
That's why I asked the question, I couldn't remember what it was.
But the problem is are we gonna have a problem when it opens particularly? And what we do for an overflow, which has been what we've been doing with other facilities.
Well, one of my comments I didn't get into, because the parking and the access is a big issue, was suggesting, we're assuming that when these open, there's private details that direct traffic, and for the time period, the experience that I've seen is that in the initial opening, there's tremendous amounts of traffic that is.
There may be another one open prior to him, right down the street.
Is that open?
Maybe not. Maybe not.
So that was one of our comments in terms of having detail and provisions for overflow parking during a certain period of time in the initial opening.
And I just want to make a comment on
What was that?
I just want to make a comment on the parking piece of it. In our host agreement, when we signed it, if there was.
Please speak up a little bit so that we can hear
Yeah,
you.
so in our host agreement, when we signed it back in August, one of the conditions is if we have an overflow where there is a lot of traffic, we would find satellite parking around the location to supplement it. So, and we have talked to other neighbors and they're willing to lease out some parking spaces, so.
Was there sufficient to get the people to the site in terms of shuttle, or is it a walk-in?
So I don't believe it was specifically detailed, but yes, it'd be like a shuttle.
Bob Gray, 40 feet Mini Road. I was just wondering, so it's not an RMD?
No, it's not.
So the 500 foot doesn't apply to it?
Correct.
And I wanted to know if I could give you this letter from Bill Creighton. I wanted to see if you could have it for the records. He couldn't make us with that team. There was off-site parking. So what would you have, a bus coming, like you drop off? So
yeah, shuttle.
Yeah. So where would the bus come? Like would drop them right off up front, or would
It would be in the parking lot. We'll have to revisit that, but it would be in the parking lot.
We have a letter from Bill Creighton, 53 Vineyard Road, Abington, Mass. Rather than read every single item on it, I'll try to paraphrase it. Harvard Dispensary Incorporated is a registered medical marijuana dispensary, RMD.
Which it isn't.
Corporation is organized exclusively, and really it's, he's saying a lot of the things that they've done, but all RMDs shall be located 500 feet away from nearest boundary line of any residential zoning district. I'm not quite sure that's the case in the Abington bylaws. That's for a medical marijuana. We've been over this before, so rather than read it, I'll have it for the minutes. But, he's asking us to deny the special permits based on zoning laws. We've been over that with the town of Weymouth, as you all know. Many of the things it's in the regulations. To spend the time of reading all this right now. But we'll put it into the records, please.
It says here, first of all, is it your Green Harbor in Marshfield in RMD? Or was it?
Marshfield, we don't have a.
You don't have any of those?
So we have an R&D in Middleborough. That's a cultivation facility and a medical dispensary that will be opening soon. So that location is.
How come you went RMD in Middleborough?
Well, we started that project before.
Okay.
we started.
Okay. So it says here, I think in one of your plans that you're looking to pursue adult use cultivation manufacturing for this facility?
No, so those are CCC materials that I was required to submit to you guys.
Okay.
And so that includes, some of the plans from the other location and how we're gonna incorporate. So here, we're just doing the dispensary, adult use only. So, some of those things may not be completely relevant to you guys, but I have to submit it.
Okay. I mean, if you want to do 25,000 square feet of cultivation, I mean, we got land, so.
Maybe in the future.
We're very open. I do need to ask, your community outreach meeting?
Yeah.
Was that the one that was held at the Polish Club?
Yes, it was.
Whose idea was it to have it at 5 PM?
It was mine.
Okay. Generally, in my experience, when people have it at 5 PM, it's because they don't want people to go. It's very difficult for people to go. Did you have a good turnout for it?
We had selectmen and one other person there.
Okay. In the future, if we need to do any public hearings, I would strongly advise you not to do it at 5 PM on a weekday. It's not very convenient to a lot of people.
What's generally the time?
I think even 6 PM is a little earlier. I'd go at least 6:30, 7.
7 PM.
7 PM would be better. How many? I'm a little thrown off just because I didn't realize that it was a split-use building. So how is the security going to be enhanced between your business and the business next door so that it's not just punching through a drywall?
So basically, in terms of the secure vault where the product would be stored, we tend to have a higher level security wall construction, which is compiled by a strong steel mesh, in addition to the studs being 12 inches on center as well.
So the entire wall separating the two pieces, is it going to be reinforced or just where the vault is?
Initially, right now, we're looking at the vault because that's where the product will be stored every evening, so there'll be no product available the rest of the space. But we can certainly...
But we have motion sensors and security cameras throughout the facility, so really, even the rooms designated, they're not accessible to all employees. They're limited access areas, so really, besides the vault where the product is in the sales floor area, you're not going to be seeing any product anywhere else in that building. And based on our facility in Middleborough, we haven't had an issue. We have also a shared tenant there as well, and the security measures that we have to put in place according to the state would definitely suffice.
So my concern is this isn't like a strip mall where there's two very separate, spaces. That this is basically, it's a house. Because I used to know people, I've been in the house. I've been to know the people who live there. It's taken a residential house and just putting walls up into it basically, and then on one side having this business, and I'm very concerned about whether or not that's sufficient or whether it needs to have some sort of additional security or safety, basically. Especially if there's a residential unit upstairs too. I'm particularly concerned about all these different uses in this one building where I have no problem with establishing this. We've already voted in favor of one. We want to come to Abington, take our money. The more I'm learning about this, the more I'm concerned about how this is laid out. Because there's a lot of unknowns. We don't know how it's going to work. We don't know if this is the best way of doing it. This is my personal reaction. I don't know if others share it. So going to the schematic, is there any landscaping being proposed?
And there's not too much area, I believe, based on the site plan, but...
Yeah, I believe the site is somewhat limited, but obviously there could be some landscapes added.
Yeah, I know you're in a tough position because the highway is going to be extended. How close does it come to the front of the building when it's done? It will have sidewalks, I think, so.
We show, there's two lines in the front of the building.
Yep.
And they both go through the planter. The one closest to the building is the new layout line. There's a taking there of about, I think, 2 or 3 feet. There's a planter out there now, and it'll still be in the planter. Again, the line furthest away from the building is the existing layout, and the one closer to the building by about 2.5 feet is the proposed layout line.
Okay. Again, speaking for myself, I think when we drew up the bylaws, one of the ideas was that there'd be investment in the building exterior as well as the interior. This is a tough property because of the current configurations. We need to see a landscaping plan. We need to see a lighting plan. You have an exterior view?
Yes. So this elevation here, which is the east elevation, is the Bedford Street side. So this is part of the existing structure that will remain. The residence will be on the second floor, and the business, which will be adjacent to the dispensary, is on the first floor. And the north elevation, which is onto that side street where our main entrance will be located, closest to the Bedford side. And then the elevation from the parking lot, and again, the existing business with the residents above.
So you're not tearing down a section of it, you're building within what's standing there now?
So we're proposing to stay within the existing footprint.
It's been a while since I've been inside that house. Is it multi-level? Is it steps up to get into different places?
Yes.
Yep.
So is there a handicap accessibility issue?
We're planning to just have one level or one elevation for the entire, floor, and which will exit to grade.
How do you get to the second floor apartments?
Because that's
On his
not,
side.
yeah, it's not part of our construction scope, so we're not, there's
How do the
currently,
people get to the second floor?
currently there is a means of access to the second floor, not through the space that we're proposing to remodel.
So you
that
haven't
would
got
be
the whole, you
unchanged.
haven't got the whole first floor?
I do not know.
I kind of think we're being, I mean, I don't want to be mean, but I think we're being rather polite. The parking doesn't work. And if you're in a handicap thing, you got to roll across the gravel, go up over a concrete curb to get to the entrance in a
Well,
wheelchair.
That's something that's definitely gonna be handled. I don't, I'd like you to air everything that you need to tonight, but certainly the parking has to be solved, and certainly the roadway has to be solved too. I mean, I know we're continuing, rather than say to them tonight.
And if your
no.
zoning issue isn't solved,
Please?
I said if your zoning issue isn't solved,
Right.
you got a big problem.
So who owns, are there still cars parked along the north end of the building?
Yeah, there's a couple of boats there right now, but it's more toward the west side. Where that jet out is, there's really nothing parked right there.
Okay.
But in the past, the used car lot has used that, had that whole stretch for their overflow. Did I just ask one question? And again, I'm thinking the same thing. If you have a residence with two parking, and you have another business where he is lettering trucks, he needs space outside because he doesn't have a garage. So he has a residence with two vehicles, I'm just using this, his business with one van, I know, then he needs space to letter trucks. Then they're gonna have employees. Where do the customers park? That's, they can't park on Helm Street, this is my concern.
Bob, you can probably answer that question.
What's that?
On where all these other,
It's obviously part of my concern, and these guys didn't get Dave's letter apparently in time for the meeting, so they've got some hurdles to cross. Well, as far as the site's concerned, that was his two biggest comments in his letter was the, number one, the zoning, and number two, the parking.
If they look at reconfiguring those spaces, they're gonna lose.
Right.
I apologize, there was some confusion on my end. He's going to close his sign business. I think through this transformation, he's gonna just take that side over as his.
So it'll just be a house?
Accessory
Okay.
apartment or storage.
Okay.
I wish that he was here, unfortunately, he did have to leave just due to the time.
Well, it's
So, that's what's being brought to my attention, I do apologize.
It's obvious not gonna be finished tonight. It's nice to air all this stuff out so they can hopefully come back with a complete plan and
So I want to make it clear that we're not opposed to the business.
Okay.
That we've already approved one in town.
Yeah.
At least, I'll speak for myself, I
Go
guess.
ahead. No.
Is that we're not opposed to the
We're definitely
business
not opposed
in
to
town. We're not trying to,
Yeah.
we'd love.
death by a billion paper cuts. This is a very problematic site. And I don't know if it's workable, if you can go back and sharpen the pencils and come back with something that works. As well as, looks a little better. The whole corridor, this is the same thing we're asking for everybody in the corridor that comes through here. We need to make this corridor better looking because it's kind of dumpy right now in a lot of spots. I apologize if there's a business owner on Route 18 in here, but the corridor is a little run down right now. So we're not making any requests of you that we wouldn't make of anybody else. Again, I think, we're talking a couple $100,000 a year for the town in revenue. We're not trying to turn that away. We need to make sure that this project works on this site, and we're not gonna have long-term problems. Again, that's me speaking, board may.
No, I think the board agrees with you.
But if there's not any other questions, I know that there's a lot of things that need to be sorted out.
As well as the ownership layout of the road. of course.
Correct, and we can look into that. Paul's saying that he's going to look through your engineer's report and come look at the plan and see how we can rework it. I know you're looking for a landscape and a lighting plan. So is there any other, plans that we didn't actually submit first, things that need to be revised or looked into?
Mr. Chairman, I think the fire chief had a question.
Yes, please. Yes,
Just,
Steve.
what was the overall square footage for the entire structure again?
4,400.
You're well below the sprinkler requirement, but just, I'm no offense to the architects or anything, but I'm just gonna be blunt. The building's a disaster. Looking at this from a fire perspective, in knowing that there's an older pre-existing residential unit in there, if there's a fire in this building anywhere, that building's gone. Despite how well we're gonna do this, the roof line, look at how many roof angles and hidden, those are all hidden void spaces ultimately in the structure in a non-sprinkler building that's residential. That building scares me just looking at that, just for what that's worth. So,
Although it looks better in pencil.
I don't know how long it'll take you to, you can come back before us on the 2nd of March. It may not give you enough time to really change your plans to have all the answers for you, because you've got to submit the plans within a couple of weeks before the next meeting. Perhaps you want to continue the hearing until the 13th of April, which would be the second meeting we have coming up. But I hate to have you come over and then continue to.
And Mr. Chairman, your preference is the plan's 2 weeks ahead, correct?
To do.
How far in advance is it that you like the plans? I apologize. It's 2 weeks, correct?
Yes, it is, probably,
Okay.
yeah. So you've only got a couple of weeks to work on it, and I'm not sure you'd have all that information within that time. It's fine with me to come back on the 2nd of March. Otherwise, it would be the 13th of April.
I gotta say, though, you don't want this to be incremental. There's enough people before you that come in and try to keep working it out month after month after month, so you don't want to do that.
But it costs you money every time you do that. It's just.
The other thing is, Liz contacted me this week. Are you saying there's a traffic study being prepared for this?
There was a traffic study that was submitted.
Liz contacted me about a referral for somebody to review, do a peer review on the traffic study. So I'm not sure that the peer review.
I think Kirk is who's been doing it, right? Jeffrey Kirk.
He conducted our traffic study, so I don't know that he can.
So she contacted me for another name. I gave her the name on Thursday or Friday when she contacted me, so I don't know if she's contacted that person yet. Point being, I'm not sure that the traffic review will be done in time for the meeting on March 2nd.
So you might want to go to April 13th. I know that puts things off, but hopefully you can get everything together, and you can certainly talk with Norwood Engineering and get a lot of these things solved in that period of time and come in with a plan. If you came in on the 13th with everything done, we could approve it if everything was the way the planning board would like it. But to come in on March, I think you're spending I don't have enough time.
Could I reschedule and ask for an extension?
I think April's better. John?
I think although we would be overly optimistic and want to come back in March, I think that in order to have enough time to have your engineers review it, and our engineers go through things, and in the interest of not being choppy, because I've been through those meetings, whether witnessed or due to various different things, and it's painful for everyone involved. I think that April probably would be the best. And another point of just clerical, I do have the tear sheets for the advertisement. Would you like me to give them to Liz when she's back?
That'd be good.
Okay.
Great.
So, motion to continue the hearing to the 13th of April.
I'll move that.
Second.
Please?
I made it, Rick seconded.
Okay. And any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So, and if you could send us a letter to continue the hearing. Okay. No, yes.
Is that a laminate cover?
I don't know exactly what material it is, but in the deep right now.
Like it.
And
Fix
I
that.
think that what they're, in general, what they're looking for, they want to submit revised site plan, as well as submit lighting plan, landscape plan, and resolve the issue as it relates to zoning, and ownership of the side street or
Go to,
public or private way.
Bond reduction on, accusatory. Yeah, request for bond reduction on accusatory place.
I've heard more than a couple of compliments on whatever they're building down there.
2 houses for
Yeah.
mom and dad and daughter.
But they're big and they look nice.
You know, I did look at the thing, Dave, and a couple of things. One, he's plowing that himself, so we really don't need the snow plowing thing, right? He's doing his own plowing, right?
Private way.
Huh?
Private way.
Yeah, so he's doing his own, so $2,000 of that, if I ever find it in here.
Yeah, I got it for information. If you want to look at it.
Here it
Well,
is.
the reason it was in there was you have a situation where you have two owners.
Don't talk medical frequency of marijuana. It's for the people who disagree with marijuana.
What is Presbyterians?
Yes, if you, excuse me, but if you could all go outside, it would help us with the TV cameras at least.
Thank you,
So-
everybody.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Gordon, and I'm-
The motion would be to reduce the surety, I don't know what the surety is now, but to reduce the surety to $34,000.
What is the current level?
111,859.
Really?
If you feel comfortable with what's on there.
I would leave it at 34,045.
That's fine.
Okay, the motion is to go to $34,045 on the bond.
Motion.
Bob,
Second?
No,
one
I'll
second
second it. No, second.
Seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of reducing the bond from the figure of 100 and...
It's actually not a bond, this is the tri-party agreement, it's
Okay.
it's to release
With the
all
bank.
but 34,040.
With the bank.
Yeah.
So on that motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Not unanimous. Thank you.
I drafted a letter for you to sign and send to everyone to confirm the vote, but Liz wasn't there, she was gonna print it out, so I'll just get it to her.
Okay.
Do you need everybody's signature?
No, I'm assuming just the chair can sign to confirm the board voted to reduce it.
Okay.
I just don't have plywood stationery to put it in front of me now.
just as well as you don't.
There's an MVP grant award that the selectmen would like to have us have one person on the committee. It has to do with what we thought we were buying for the town of Abington for the parking lot at the high school. And they're looking for someone from the planning board to be on the committee, along with the fire department, the police department, park and recreation, conservation. I don't know who would like to serve on that.
What is it again?
Yeah, what is it? Remember the land we bought behind Roger Woods'
Yes.
property? They originally bought it because we thought we needed the extra overflow parking.
Yes.
Okay. they're not gonna need the parking. And so now they're gonna turn it into, I think, a memorial for first responders. Is that correct?
That was one proposal. There's also a proposal to make it some recreation space like beach volleyball. I think the committee is trying to come up with ideas and make a proposal.
So we paid how much for this piece of property?
600,000.
That was, yeah, the town bought it for 600,000, really prevented from being privately developed.
That was not my understanding. My understanding was we might need more parking, and to do it now would be a better situation.
Yeah.
But that's how it was presented to the town of Abington. But anyway, we voted at town meeting. You were there, right?
I don't remember that condition about the parking, because I was on the building committee, right?
Yeah, I know it. Well, that's what I understood it as.
You guys must have been under a different understanding than.
Well, because that was purchased after
Kind of,
the
yeah,
school.
after the
That's
building
correct.
started.
Yeah,
Yep.
because we weren't allowed to spend any of the school money on that property because it was not school property.
Somebody want to serve on that committee?
No.
Bruce?
Sure.
Bruce.
Bruce.
Thanks,
Bruce.
I do a lot of MVP stuff at the office, so what the hell?
All right. 181 Brockton Avenue, you handling that tonight?
I do, and I have good news and bad news,
Good.
because it's late. I have a 6-page letter to try to respond to all those things, but unfortunately, the plan that was supposed to accompany it, I noticed some discrepancies, so I sent it back to get finished. I didn't get the plan back, so I will submit the entire thing to Liz, and whenever you want to do it in March, or, did I just hear you doing an April meeting on the?
March meeting, too. There's a March meeting and
March
an April meeting.
Second, whatever, the first Monday.
Right.
Did I hear you do April, the second Monday in April? Is that what I just heard?
Yeah, second Monday, yeah.
You're not doing it the first?
No.
Okay.
So where do you want to go?
It's not,
So we'll continue.
I'm assuming you guys are gonna have a busy March 2nd. I'll do it March 2nd, but I know you have no zoning hearings and,
No, that's all right.
okay,
We
March
already-
2nd. Well, I'll be ready March 2nd, I'm fine with that.
still not bringing Phil into that back corner, is he? Behind the gym, the back corner is a big pile.
Oh, you mean stockpiled? Not that I know, I mean, I don't know what's going on up back there.
On where?
Out behind of the building on the,
On Elm Street?
no,
No, on Brockton Ave.
Brockton Ave, out in the back
Oh, we
corner.
haven't heard anything on that.
Oh, he's processing, isn't he? I thought he was processing.
We've also, on the other thing, on Route 58, we've gone to legal on that too, because they never responded or anything.
Okay.
So we need a motion to continue the hearing?
That's not-
Continue this?
No.
181
No, I
Brockton?
don't think so. I think we just put it on the agenda for next month.
Sure, and I'll submit everything to Liz probably later this week.
And then on the roadway name at 392 Randolph Street, currently Robert B. English, that name was already assigned somewhere else. And the question comes up, on short little streets for veterans that have passed away in the service of the country, sometimes something as little as 2 houses on a little way, so to speak, I think it'd be more appropriate to name longer streets for those people, for those veterans that passed away.
Name them after short people,
So-
for the short street.
That's part of your proposed subdivision regulation revision, because right now it says any street must use a veteran's name. Now it says any public way must use a veteran's name. Private ways, it still says it should be something with a history or character or something like that. And apparently what happened was, one developer went to Liz and got the English name assigned, and another developer went to the veterans agent, and he gave him the English name.
So now they gotta come to the planning board, so we'll know. And that's fair, I mean, obviously, the fire department has to approve it.
Yeah, have them come to us with a plan.
Please?
Have them propose to us a different name.
Right.
Yeah, we'll do that. The plan's already recorded and says English way, but this has happened in the past, like, we'll just file a document to document the name, but I'll let you know what the name might be proposed in March.
And then on the the zoning board of appeals, is there anything on that that you need to respond?
One second.
Nothing jumped out to me.
Oh, Abington Ale House is getting a new digital sign apparently,
Yeah.
but there's a request for a waiver. I don't know what the waiver might be. You don't know, do you?
You don't have to get that anymore for a digital sign, right? That's just a,
Well,
you
I
can
think
get
it's
one.
part of the formality.
It's a zoning issue now, and they have new guidelines, and so, but I don't
Yeah,
know
I
what
thought
the waiver
I
is.
thought it was acceptable, but.
it is, but maybe they want it to be 3x5 instead of 2x4 or something, or,
Yeah,
I don't know.
location or something.
Interesting to see where they put that with the road
I'm sure that's what brought this issue up.
Yeah, I mounted off the building. Well, they're a good neighbor.
I think that's it.
Could I request something to be put on for new business?
Sure.
It'll be a very quick thing.
New business for next meeting or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had an email exchange with Jeff about the new lights at a business. I don't want to name it because it's not on the agenda. There's a couple establishments in town that I think are afoul of some of our lighting bylaws and some of our other bylaws. Instead of sending in individual requests to the enforcement officer, I'm thinking if there's anything the board has noticed that they would like him to check into, I'll compile a list if you can provide anything to me. And then we'll just send in one letter from the planning board saying, please check out this property, this property, this property.
Yeah,
So-
I think so. They're all getting pretty obvious now,
Yeah.
these properties.
So if you have noticed something around town that you would like them to check into in terms of enforcement, let me know for ahead of next meeting, and I'll have a letter that we can review and we can discuss formally.
Send you an email? or
Send me an email, just me, that way it's,
Okay.
it doesn't violate.
Okay, is there anything further?
Oh, just a heads up, at our March meeting, Old Colony Planning Council is going to be sending the completed housing production plan, because we've got to enforce, there's several things going on. The point is that we need to endorse it, and the selectmen need to endorse it for a couple of things to move forward. And Laurie Muncy, in our office, has completed it. So it'll be, Liz has said it'll be, I think Liz made it available to you guys. It'll be on the agenda for next month.
Okay.
And I would appreciate that being approved.
Anything further? Motion to adjourn being ordered. Motion made, second, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.